I saw that Ben Shapiro had a quote unquote debate with Brett Cooper, a person who I had not heard of, on the Barbie movie. I was like, oh, we're actually going to get someone telling him how dumb he is about his media takes? But I took a glance into it because I was a little worried. I'm like, I don't know who this person is, and Ben Shapiro doesn't actually invite people with differing opinions that are capable of expressing them to talk with him. He exclusively puts himself in a position where if there is pushback on his bad ideas, there you will not be able to the person with the better ideas won't have the means of taking him to task. So I was a little surprised. I was like, "Who? What's going to go on here?" And I can show you, um,
Colorful.
uh, show you what I saw about it. Give me one second. Let me switch scenes here. Um, which was that this person is also not
It was a
good
great.
at media takes. So this person, I hadn't heard of them, Brett Cooper. So I looked into. I was like, who is this person? Another conservative commentator, obviously, because he's not going to invite someone with good opinions on his show. He definitely doesn't want someone being like, actually, the messages are good, and you're just uh, preloading your bias into everything. Uh, and her basic take is, I only watched like a minute or so, but her basic take is, well, no, it wasn't good, but it was fun, which is just such a bad take. And like, again, they're in agreement, right? This is the illusion of debate. They're in agreement that the movie is bad. They just disagree about whether there's something enjoyable about it. But it's being framed as a debate so he can pretend like he's open to new ideas and he just keeps winning. Yeah, I also would have assumed him with Brett. That's why I didn't like push back. I don't know. Yeah, but um, I appreciate I appreciate the effort at not misgendering people, Camgao. I will say that. Whoops.
Colorful. It was a
Why
great.
did it select? I tried to select Brett Cooper and it selected just Brett. I don't wonder. So yeah, this person is American conservative political commentator, media personality, actress, hosts the YouTube channel with a comment section with Brett Cooper, produced by the Daily Wire. Like, it's someone who works for him who is in agreement with like this is not there's someone with the same bias, right? They're not gonna have she's not gonna push back in any meaningful way, but it will be the appearance of pushback and I wouldn't be surprised honestly if Ben came to the conclusion of okay, fine, you can find it enjoyable to seem like he's open to new ideas, but obviously this isn't a debate. If you all want, we can go over the we can go over that video, though suspect it would be rather inane. I try not to pre-watch stuff so you get my genuine first time reaction, but I can also watch it and then let y'all know if it's worthwhile. I mean, we can figure it out, right? So alternatively, I went through the watch later stuff to see if there's anything we set aside that would have been cool to go over, and was reminded of this flat Earth debate we have hanging out here. Now, I'm no scientist, but as far as I can tell, the arguments that the Earth is round are very good, actually, and that the arguments that it's not, very bad, actually. Uh, some There's a lot of stuff to talk about here. It's kind of cool to do like flat Earth proofs because they're pretty accessible, but they're not trivial. You do have to go outside a little bit, which I know, very scary. But there's some stuff you can do. I was most impressed by one of the first proofs I had heard about regarding the shape of the Earth. It was done by I forget which ancient Greek. I used to know the name, but look through a telescope. I'm curious. I'm curious. Well, we'll come back to that, Kemgao. Um, I oh, hold on. Now I want to. Well, okay, I'll come back to it. The most interesting proof I had heard was from one of the ancient Greeks whose name I forget, and it was kind of cool because very limited technology, but also the built-in avoiding the built-in assumption of like, well, we see it's flat, so it's flat. right? Wanting to find out, like, is that actually the case? And so the way it was done was, okay, we know the distance between, I think it was Athens and Alexandria. I don't remember the two locations, but we know the distance between them. And I'll coordinate with an assistant of mine. I'll tell him ahead of time, like, hey, go to this place, and on this day at noon, put a stick in the ground, sticking straight up, and then met it, and it's at noon, right? So we should be able to measure the angle of the shadow, and uh, you would expect it to be the same directly above, right? If it's flat. But it wasn't. There was a bit of a shadow in one of the locations. I don't know which one. And so it was like, okay, measure the angle of that shadow, which they did. And then using the angle and the distance that they knew between the two locations, they could determine, well, clearly I think it was in Athens, that there was no shadow. The sun was directly above rather. Okay, cool. But then in Alexandria, it was a slight angle, which means, well, even we stuck them straight in. Clearly, the angle in relation to the sun is different, right? One is tilted slightly, and we can measure that angle to determine that it does have that shape, that spherical shape. And in addition, they were able to extrapolate the circumference of the Earth, and it was pretty close. Like when I heard about this, it was some philosophy class, and they just mentioned it in passing, but gave the numbers. So I did the math myself, and it's really close. But one of the things I'm kind of interested in is, Camgao, you say look through a telescope. I'm curious what information from a telescope implies the shape of the Earth. Because while I would say would make sense that if every other stellar body it is spherical, it stands to reason that the Earth might be as well. Flat Earthers, not sold on that one, actually. They tend to be like, there's a large amount of like biblical cosmology, but not necessarily. It's kind of a weird movement. And in fact, there's a very famous tweet from the Flat Earth Society saying that every other we've observed that Mars is round, but not that the Earth is. Even though we have, right? There are other things you can do. For example, you can notice during a lunar eclipse. Remember, what happens during a lunar eclipse is that the Earth is passing between the sun and the moon, and so it's casting a shadow onto the moon. And because the Earth is so much larger, it can completely obscure the moon. But in doing so, it's passing in front of, right? It's not just staying in. It's not just there. It has to move. Well, I guess this is a better way of showing it for you, right? It has to move in front of it, and as you move in front of it, you see a circular shape. Now, of course, the response to that from the flat earthers is, well, we know that the Earth is a flat disk. So that doesn't help. But there are a lot of problems. I would point you to a really, really amazing video by Folding Ideas called Searching for a Flat Earth. One of his best videos. For a while I argued it was his best video until he made Line Goes Up, which is another phenomenal video he made. But something to remember that he points out in that video is that flat earthers are not otherwise empty vessels. I'm quoting him directly there. They have an agenda. They have motivations and wants. People don't just believe in the flat earth and then seek to prove it. They have a reason they want the earth to be flat. Why do they think it's a flat disk? Well, because they can't avoid for one, they cannot avoid the observation of a lunar eclipse. They have to say that it is in some regard circular because it casts a circular shadow, but they believe it's flat, so it's a flat disk. Let me see if I can find some. Let me find some images because there are some interesting ones. This is a joke image that's brought up a lot, but I absolutely love. This is no joke. pretty accurate to what a lot of flat earthers say. They don't say it's a square or whatever, but they'll say like, yeah, we can observe that these other celestial bodies are spherical, but we don't observe that for the Earth. And look, you can see it's flat. It's flat. I'm not kidding. They do say stuff like this. Also, who was this from? I'm wondering if this is ironic. All right, we're not gonna go too much on a deep dive. That was just kind of concerning. I was like, did we accidentally find Nazi? But they do have like ideas for their model. One of the things they also say is like that Antarctica forms this ice ring that keeps the water in. That's another thing that's kind of necessary. For there is like why does the water not flow out? Because they also don't really believe in gravity. They do. They just don't think they do, and they think down is some special direction in which things are pulled. Not because of gravity, but like there's like a kind of like a universal down. If this flat Earth was flipped 180 degrees over, they would say that everything should fall off. There's something special about down in flat Earth cosmology. But there are a lot of really funny problems with this model. Some of this comes from biblical cosmology as well. There's a description of the Earth with like the firmament and the waters above the waters, and that would mean that the Earth and the Sun and the Moon are the same size and are just different distances, and yada yada. It's really crazy. The more you look into it, the wackier it gets. Including one of the questions that you have for a model like this of like, well, how does the sun work? Because the sun, it's daytime in some parts of the world, while it's nighttime in others. But if the sun is pointing at all of this, how is that possible? And they're like, well, the sun has this like cone effect. It's really wacky. I'm not sure how much of it we're going to get into here. But I would suggest that instead of approaching it as they are trying to prove, they have reasons to believe the Earth is flat, and they are trying to make that argument. It is more they want the Earth to be flat, and they are coming up with reasons why that must be the case. And they'll dismiss huge amounts of evidence because some of the extrapolations about the universe would be insane. Yeah, look, their reasoning is absolutely insane, CamCal. Among other things, like things they have to wrestle with is like the speed of stars. Like if the Earth, like we see different constellations at night in different parts of the world. So, well, the reason for that is in part because like because like we're facing different areas of the night sky, but that doesn't work in flat Earth. In a flat Earth model, because we should all be facing the same part of the sky. We shouldn't change. We don't change where the sky. Oh wait, some of them I forget. Some of them are geocentrists and some of them are not. But like it shouldn't make sense in a flat Earth model that we see different constellations. So they have to say like the stars are moving, but they're so far away that the speed at which they'd have to be moving is relativistic. And so they throw out all of relativity because it wouldn't work. They're willing to throw out everything as long as they keep the Earth being flat. Here, by the way, if I can find the image, is hold on, let me see if I can find it. Is actually one of the best arguments that I've ever seen. Here we go. This is actually a phenomenal argument against the flat Earth. This is a tennis ball. Looks flat though, right? Maybe there's something about being really close to an object that obscures the ability for you to determine its shape. Because you are so close that the curvature is imperceptible. Now, it's a kind of a grainy picture, but you get the idea, right? I heard that some of them think there are other planets that the other planets being round are mere projections. That I haven't heard, but that wouldn't surprise me at all because that would also lend a level of consistency. But this is a really good argument, like in a way, where you can just be like, why can't it be like this? Or are you saying tennis balls are flat? Like we know now, a flat earther would probably say, "Oh, you probably took a picture of a flat thing and then said it was a tennis ball or whatever else." Like they'll make up all sorts of justifications about like pictures and whatever aren't real, but obviously this is a thing you can do, and this isn't particularly weird. I think this is the one. This is actually the picture I was thinking of. Yeah, tennis ball is a flat. Here, we took in the zoomed in picture. Uh, so yeah, we're just gonna remind ourselves that the arguments they're making are probably nonsense. The difficulty is you have to actually kind of know a lot to know why they're nonsense. So we're going to start from the position of that's probably not true until they start justifying things, okay? And that's the bias we're going in with because I've seen too many flat earthers to think any better of their position. I've seen too much of this. And as I said, there's a lot of proofs you can do for this. They just require a little bit of effort and sometimes access to a particularly large amount of flat area, either an ocean or a lake or a salt flat or something like that. Sometimes you kind of have to have something geographic to help you do a proof for the shape of the Earth. Oh yeah, also ships going over the horizon is a problem for flat earthers. Their solution is that's just as how far eyes can see. However, we know that's not true because if you increase your elevation, you can see farther. And boats also don't just like vanish backwards into the distance. They appear to sink under the horizon. But they have their own answers to that. Oh, and by the way, like I'm generalizing, saying like this is their answer to this, but like there are so many different answers because it's not a scientific perception. It's like it's pseudoscience, right? This is not a scientific approach that they're using, and there are as many different answers as there are flat earthers because the point is the belief, not how you get there, and it's actually pretty disingenuous. I know I was typing it into Google, but that's just so I can find it. It's really just ingenuous to call it the flat Earth model because it's not a model. It doesn't work. It's a picture someone drew.
Today we are debating flat Earth, and we're starting right now.
Let's get into it. Oh, and I don't know who the flat Earth person is. Billy Zig. I don't know who that person is. I know we've seen T Jump before, and we're gonna see like, oh no, this guy is actually can be a good debater. I don't know what the hell happened in his brain when he was debating Vosh, but you know, such as it is. What about satellite images? Oh no, absolutely not. Flat Earthers hate NASA like with a vengeance because they think they're like the propagators of the lie that's keeping us all in change. Oh yeah, that's also the question of like, why is there like so much argument that the Earth is round? Well, they think it's like this giant conspiracy, and NASA's at the center of it to get us to worship the devil or whatever. Like, a lot of these people became QAnoners to spoil that video from Folding Ideas I was recommending because they think in this way. No, they absolutely do not believe satellite images because look, it shows around Earth and that's not possible. And NASA is trying to push this. They absolutely despise NASA.
Gentlemen, thrilled to have you here for this epic debate on the shape of the Earth. It's going to be a fun one, folks. Very exciting stuff. Want to let you know if it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we've got a lot more debates coming up. So, for example, or if you're tuning,
I'm sorry, James. I just want the debate.
It's so statement of fire for me to mention. So those links. So with that, first time far across the globe.
Hi, James.
Planet. So thank you, Billy, for being here.
Oh, of course. There's also that. Hold on. I have to find it out. Hold on. There's like a well-known tweet that was like, no, I can't find it. No, there was a really hold on, maybe it's in one of these articles. There was a tweet that came out where it was like the Flat Earth Society tweeted something to the effect of like they have members all around the world, around all around the globe, and someone's like, say that again, but slowly. Can't find it. It's not really relevant. It's just kind of funny of like, look, even the way they talk about it was like, you know why we say that, right? It's obviously not like a good
Hi,
gotcha.
James.
It's funny.
Glad to hear. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm just going to ignore this screen because I've got a bit of a delay, so I just don't want to get put off by the screen. But yeah, thanks for having me here. And who?
Oh yeah, another really funny one is like, plane flights, the routes that they take, because everything would have to be different on a flat Earth model, and it's kind of funny how like they're like, well, it's proof that the flat Earth is real because some of these routes don't make sense except for the fact that there are other considerations other than the shortest distance between 2 points, but also they have to act like certain flights don't exist. I'm sorry, I know too much about this to not like pepper in a bunch of this stuff. I should stop and we should just watch the debate.
Talking about the shape of the Earth. We all thought this was solved many years
I was
ago,
reminded because he has an accent
that's
and
why a
like
lot
some
of
of
us
them are
get-
like, well, if Australia was really on the other side of the globe, wouldn't the people fall off because they think there's something special about down?
rather triggered when we hear this topic, you know. Yeah, glad to be here. And I see MC2 just made a comment about, you know, you need something like 8th grade science. It's pretty cool. Good comment. And isn't that just the typical rhetoric we hear when we first hear about this discussion? And a lot of people continue with it. I've invited people from around the world in a new
From around the world, huh? It's stupid, but
call it an experiment or an event that I've put together called Test the Curve Day 2020. What that's about is I'm trying to encourage people on
oh
the
yeah,
20
flat earthers pretend to do tests all the time. Oftentimes there are massive problems with their tests, but often it's just they just do the math wrong or like it proves the shape. There's a famously one flat earther who was like, "Oh, if you do this experiment, it'll prove the shape that the Earth is flat." It proved the Earth was round. He was like, "Oh shit."
21st and the 22nd
I forget
of
who it
March,
was, so I can't give you
coming in
more of the
about,
story.
10 days time to get out and test the curve on their own, do their own experiments.
Yeah, like I said, the experiments they
As I
suggest
said,
are
we
usually
all thought this
massively
topic was solved
flawed.
many millennia ago. You'll hear people say it was solved 2,500 years ago. Funny enough, they didn't even have the technology to prove it. And
Well, as we mentioned earlier, you don't really need that much technology to prove it. You can use pretty simple stuff to determine the curvature. In fact, one of the issues in the example I was mentioning earlier was how do you know the distance between Athens and Alexandria? And apparently it was like there were these tools that they had developed that were pretty simple of like this mechanism where like rotate as like the wheels of whatever like the cart you're taking turns. It turns this mechanism, and every fixed distance it drops a pebble, and so you can count how many pebbles got dropped into the container, and that's how far it was. So like you can do a lot of stuff with very little technology actually, if you're inventive enough. It's something that's well, we just don't have as much a use for when we have all these tools. But you know, you can. I mean, these tools didn't come from nowhere. People made them, and you can do a lot of determining without these tools either. That's why there's this lecture Richard Carrier I found really interesting, in part because of his discussions of ancient technology, and he was like, "Oh yeah, here's this ancient Roman who figured out what the kidneys do, and they didn't have like anywhere near the technology that we have. He didn't exactly know how it worked, but he figured out what it was doing."
here we are now with advanced technologies that we're getting varying results to what they
I think his name was Galen.
had. So, you know, sticks and shadows and observations over the horizon just with the bare naked eye is not good enough. And that's why we're here.
Hilarious, given that hilariously saying the observation with the bare naked eye aren't good enough when the flat Earth like backup argument is look with your eyes, don't you see it's flat? Like, are you telling me you don't believe what your eyes are telling you?
Assumptions they made obviously influence many other assumptions along the way, many other calculations that continued based on on an R value.
And
a
so
radius
many
of this
things
Earth.
would
And
not work
I've
if
been
the
looking for
Earth was
about
flat.
5 years now, and
Like
I can't find this
GPS and a million
radius.
other things.
I'm keen to have a discussion with Tom and see if he can prove that the Earth is spherical, and I can go back to my old life and be a ball earther, and I'll join your camp. You prove it, I'll join your camp. I write a new book, and I'll I'll be the biggest advocate on your side. So I'm gonna let Tom go for it now. I know it's not 8 minutes.
That's all.
Was there any argument there? No?
As much as
Weird.
you want to use, or as little as you want to use. Thanks so much for that, Billy.
Right.
We
I will.
glad to have you here. And
I guess one of the
saying-
difficulties is that people like this, being conspiracists, are often just looking for the attention. It doesn't actually matter if they get if they make any arguments. There's an implication. This is kind of, I don't remember if Sarah Zed mentioned this, but one of the unfortunate things about debate is that by putting two people next to each other as if they're equals, it implies that they are, and their positions. I don't mean the people. I mean the positions. That the positions are equally reasonable, even though they're not. And that's why she was saying, some debates are not worth having, and I agree. I'm not sure if flat Earth is like on the cusp for me, because a lot of people do believe this, but I don't think they're amenable to argument as part of the problem. Do you think any conspiracy theories are true? I guess what we mean by conspiracy theory is kind of, it kind of matters there. So like some have been true. We know MK Ultra was like an actual program of the CIA, and they like developed LSD, if I'm not mistaken. Operation Paperclip was another one. Black Orchestra was another one. We know there have been like what could be called conspiracy theories. I guess one I think might be true that you would call a conspiracy theory is I don't believe the Warren Report. That is the official story of the assassination of JFK. The magic bullet theory seems on its face nonsense. So you could call that a conspiracy theory. Now, I don't think that like Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK, like Trump alleged or whatever. But it seems like pretty clear that we don't know everything about what happened there, and that something, like some other explanation must be the case. And that's as far as I go with it. But there are some things that like, well, is it a conspiracy theory? Like, I talk about I've talked about a few times on stream how, billionaires impact policy a lot more than votes do. Well, is that a conspiracy theory? Like, if you put it in a certain way, like, oh, there's this elite cabal who controls the government, but it's not a conspiracy. It's a feature of the system. It's the way liberal bourgeois democracy works, right? It's that money confers power. If there are not mechanisms in place to check that power, it can be used to compound it, right? And it's not that every politician is being bought off so much as, well, if a politician is running and they have views that are in alignment with someone with a lot of money, well, that person is more likely to donate to that politician, which gives them an advantage. That's not I don't know if you'd call it a conspiracy, but like maybe, I guess, like, that's what I mean about, what do we mean about conspiracy theories? Oftentimes it's a conspiracy theory due to its shape and the way it manifests. A great analogy that I had heard once is if it's kind of like constructing an argument, where a table has this flat surface and has these four legs, and when you argue with the conspiracy theorist, you'll say like, look, this leg isn't here and this leg isn't here, it's just a flat board. They'll say, no, it must have legs because it's a table and tables have legs. And this is the way conspiracism often, yeah, exactly, campaign contributions. But it's also, well, I'll come back to that. But like, this is exactly the way conspiracism often manifests, is that they start with the conclusion. They start with the Earth is flat, and then they derive from that reasons it must be the case. Whereas, and that's what I would call like conspiracism, and in the mechanism of thought, and that's what I'm talking about, rather than like, well, yeah, sometimes conspiracies happen, right? There's like literally crime of conspiracy to do stuff. It just means people working together to do a thing, right? if two people collaborate to commit a crime, that's conspiracy to commit that crime. But yeah, campaign contributions, but also just like it's out in the open with PACs and super PACs, right? That's not some conspiracy. It's not like some nefarious cabal. It's out in the open. It's just the way the world works. Citizens United, as we mentioned yesterday in the Barbie movie thing, yeah, was allowed for corporations to donate essentially unlimited amounts of money. Now, sometimes they have to do that through the political action committees, where like technically they can't coordinate with the candidate, but like how well is that regulated? I mean, I forget who it was. Was it Romney? There was some presidential candidate who's like, it was like his brother or his dad or his wife, someone like that, was the person running this super PAC for them, and it was like, what, you just never talk about it over dinner? And he's like, no, we just won't talk about that. Like, is this a conspiracy? You can say it is if you like, but like, I don't think it is. It operates with the mechanism of conspiracism. Is the line I draw. Does that make sense, Camgo?
Thing for Tom. Doesn't have to use the whole 8 minutes as he usually doesn't, but if he wants, it's up to him. Thanks for being here as well, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, we know the world is a globe because we can see it. We literally been to space, and we can just turn around and look. We have pictures and satellites. We can take a.
This is an okay argument. Part of, like, I don't love like how like we can see it. But like, his opponent hasn't given really any reason, and you can lean on, we have this evidence, and make him out the conspiracism in his mind. Like, don't do the work for him, I guess, is what's happening here. He'll probably dismiss anything that comes out of NASA, but make him do it. Make him say out loud that NASA is nonsense. Make himself look ridiculous instead of doing it yourself.
Hoping we can look and see the satellites, take the pictures. We can see the pictures from those satellites and confirm that they're real. And we can see the International Space Station, so we know it's there. And we can see all the satellites that the different countries have sent. We know they're there. And it's pretty ridiculous to think that every single country is in on some grand scheme to hide the fact that the world is actually flat.
That's something it's a good argument that I like a lot, and I've used before when talking to people. Oftentimes with conspiracies, you can actually dismiss them. You can actually argue against them without knowing anything about it by the size of the conspiracy. Because think about it, like how many, not just how many people, but how many countries, how many organizations would have to be so massively committed to the shape of the Earth, of like lying about the shape of the Earth, that every single source on the subject says it's round, except for the cranks, right? It's not just NASA. It's every country that has a satellite in orbit. Every country that has people in the International Space Station. Anyone. And all of these organizations that put them there, all of the discussion, all of this has to be coordinated. For what purpose? To deny the shape of the Earth? Like, why would they be doing this? I remember doing this with a friend who, sadly, was kind of taken in by the Sandy Hook conspiracy nonsense. And part of the thing you could do is, like, how many people would have to be involved with this and never say anything about it? Literally not one ever leaked it. And it's not just the people involved, it's like the people planning it and the like built-in, because especially with a lot of the conspiracy getting to like, oh, like these people are still real and exist elsewhere, and like the level of cover-up dwarfs the actual accusation by such orders of magnitude that it seems ridiculous. And like, you have to assume a greater conspiracy for the cover-up than the actual thing that occurred. And like the unlikelihood of that is pretty important. And I'm glad T-Jump mentioned it. And you can do this with all sorts of stuff. Huge amounts of things. Because like literally everyone has to keep quiet, but somehow it's only the cranks that speak up about it. It's kind of interesting, right?
For no reason.
We saw this a bit with the vaccine nonsense a few weeks ago.
Absolutely no reason why they would all do this, especially since they all hate each other. So if there was actually some like one fact that they could all get right and be like superior over all the others, like if China could say, "Oh, the world is flat," and they would be more right than America, they do it. But they didn't because it's not. The Russians were the first ones to send the first object to space, which was Sputnik. And the Russians and the Americans just hate each other.
Yep. So why are then
If
the
the Americans
I think it's
could just
possible
say,
for
"No,
many
the
people to
world's
be part of a
actually
cover
flat."
up. It is possible, but the more people you add, the less likely it's possible to keep that quiet. And these conspiracies tend to be on the like the number of people that would have to be involved gets to absurd numbers. Even with the Sandy Hook thing, you have all the children, all the parents, all the people like involved in the in the actual act, all the law enforcement, all the people planning it, all the people putting it in ferreting these people off into hiding in the witness protection program, all the people providing for them. Like this would be a massive, massive conspiracy. Now it's not impossible, right? Confidential documents exist. Classified documents exist, so long as Trump isn't sharing them with everybody. But the more people you have involved, the less likely it is, and the more wild it is that it never comes out. Right, and especially when there's not a threat of repercussion. So something like with flat Earth, if some scientist could prove that the Earth was flat, what would happen to them? Nothing would happen to them because who cares? There's no reason for this to cover up to occur. On a similar note, like if someone could demonstrate that the like problems with vaccines in general, nothing would happen to them. Andrew Wakefield lied about it and made a career off of being wrong. So obviously it's not like you're just going to get like executed and your body dumped in the sea if you speak out. And so when there isn't a mechanism for enforcement on keeping a secret that on this scale, it seems wild that nobody would say anything about it. Not everyone involved is necessarily informed. They might be lied to. Sure, but now there's a structure to the conspiracy, right? Now it's you have to have an organizational, like there's an organization charts and shit, and someone who might have been lied to can still figure things out from what they've seen, like this isn't just because you're being lied to doesn't mean like, oh, you just go along with it. The Sandy Hook thing's a good example. Sure, the person taking the kid into hiding might be lied to, but he might go, hey, that kid looks like that kid, and put two and two together, or that kid might grow up and change their mind, or any number of things. And so like, yes, people can be lied to, but the people who can be lied to need to have basically no information. It doesn't really solve for anything.
And so Sputnik was a lie. They would have done that. I mean, they hated the Russians. They wanted to beat the Russians in every single way. But they didn't, because it's not. I mean, we can demonstrate it's clearly there is space and clearly the world is round. All of the math works. The way to send satellites to space requires that it's a globe Earth, and to get it into orbit requires it's a globe Earth, and all the math required works for the globe Earth model. And all of the communication time between the satellites in space to Earth are on globe Earth math and general relativity, and they work. And
another thing that's really important is, as he's pointing out here, is that the extrapolations, the things that must be true about the universe based on the shape of the Earth, all work. Like he was saying, GPS would not work if the Earth was flat, but it does work, and all of these things do work. Whereas the flat Earth model, quote unquote, it's not a model, can't explain anything, can't predict anything, and none of the things you would expect to see, nothing that you would expect to work based on it actually works. They instead have to backfill and say like, this is how we can explain away the things that shouldn't work, not here's a thing that makes more sense in this model. The closest they've come to it that I've seen is, as I said, the airline routes. But they still don't work, and they still don't make sense, and there are better explanations in the globe model.
There are no alternatives.
Especially when we're talking about something with science, things that work is pretty relevant, right? If something works, it seems like there would be reason for it to work.
Alternative whatever you want to propose just doesn't work. Only the globe math works to get these satellites into space, to get the calculations to work for the communication with the satellites.
And you can
or
see that
calculation for
Billy Zig has got this like
objects
smile
in
on his face because he
space
knows
and
he's
where they're
gonna
go and how
go
fast
nuts
they're gonna
about
travel.
like NASA
All of that is
conspiracism.
just all
Don't
globe
tell
Earth
me you
math
believe
and
there are really
general relativity,
satellites.
special relativity, Newtonian mechanics, those kinds of things. It's all just the globe model that works. There isn't an alternative. Like if you wanted to say that the flat Earth was a valid alternative, you'd have to create an alternative kind of mathematics that can do everything that the globe models can do.
Oh, and by the way, this is a something that's kind of neat about this is that or flat earthers presume in the same way that creationists do that if they can disprove the current model, their model is de facto correct. Notice creationists generally just try to prove evolution isn't real. They never prove that creation is. They assume that if evolution is not true, therefore creationism must be. But that's not how that works. It could be another thing. And it's more obvious with flat Earth. Oftentimes their only thing is to prove that the Earth is not round. But one thing I would love to do with the flat earther is be like, actually, I'm not going to take the round Earth position. I'm going to take the cube Earth position. Everything we see is flat, and yes, it is flat like you say it is. However, the Earth in its entirety is not flat. This is merely this face of the Earth, and there are 5 other ones that are being hidden from us. How could they ever disprove that? How could they ever argue that their model proves a flat Earth but not a cube Earth, or a cylindrical Earth if they think the Earth is a flat disk, right? That the face we see is the top of a cylinder, and on the other side is another Earth, you know? But there's a long cylinder. How could they ever prove it wrong?
As well or better, which you can't, which is a problem. And then you need to make novel testable predictions to show that if my model is correct, then we can predict this new thing that no one knows yet, that the globe earthers don't predict, and that only we can, and we get it right and they don't. That's how science works. It's all about novel testable predictions.
Yep.
Everybody
There's
has a
no
hypothesis.
testable
The one that can
predictions
make
of the
novel
flat
testable
Earth.
predictions is the one that's right. The globe Earth has done that numerous times over and over and over again, which is why we know it's right. You know, and the fact that we can literally see it. So we have pretty resoundingly solid evidence that the world is a globe, like absolute certainty kind of levels. It's like rejecting evolution, or rejecting that germs cause disease, or rejecting that atoms create radiation. Like all of these are just facts of reality. We know them with like absolute certainty. So yeah, we know for a fact the world is a globe, and there's no contesting that at all.
One thing I would have liked to see a little bit more from T-Jump, well, I liked a lot of his arguments and a lot of the approaches. I would have liked to see, like, here's a thing we've done to prove the shape, other than we've taken pictures. Like, here's something that is, like, you could go and do and test. There are ways of doing that. It's a little hard in a debate because you don't have access to, like, here, let me show you my findings. You'd have to, like, do a PowerPoint kind of thing, which can often look kind of bad. But in Searching for a Flat Earth, that video I'm going to keep talking about until we finish with this, I assume. He starts with an experiment where he went to, I think, Lake Minnewanka, I think is the name of the lake, and just like, well, I can see the far shore, and it's like 7 kilometers away, so if I take my camera and I lower its elevation, I shouldn't be able to see the far shore as well. It should be obscured by the curve. And then he does that, and that's what happens. It's better done outside of a debate, but I think there's probably some proof T-Jump could have mentioned here about, like, here's a thing here's like a testable thing that we can use to show, and not just like we took a picture, because this guy definitely is going to start screeching about how, like, well, he might not screech about it, but like this guy probably thinks that all those satellite photos are bogus, and like there's a global conspiracy to keep the truth from you for, you know, reasons.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for that, Tom. We will now kick it into open discussion mode. As I can tell, Billy's licking his chops. He's excited.
He's very excited. He's raring to go.
Thanks so much. The floor is all yours.
He's excited.
Big
What up,
time.
buddy?
I wish I counted the amount of times you said "we," Tom. You kept saying "we've been to space."
Oh
Excuse me.
no!
We've done this.
I forgot. Flat Earthers don't believe anything anyone else has ever said unless it agrees with them. This is another aspect of conspiracism. this is another thing they'll do. He'll say, "Oh, we've been to space." No, you haven't been to space. But so you don't know, like, that you might have been lied to. The point, of course, that Tom Junk was making was that it's not just that people have been to space, but people with competing interests have been to space and all agreed on this thing. So it doesn't matter if I've personally gone. There are people who hate each other who have both agreed on this, you know? But on top of that, like, this guy is willing to, like, if a flat earther went up and was like, "Oh, I went up in a spacecraft and I saw the Earth was flat," this guy would be like, "Yep, see, I knew it." There's no way he would dismiss that. It's again motivate, like, he's accepting of evidence when it is in accordance with his conclusion, and exclusively that. That's not actually being open to evidence.
We've done that. Who's we? What do you mean
Humans.
we? And then you went to China and Russia. These guys, yeah, they all hate each other. So why do they trust each other and hate each other at the same time? Why
trust
do
each
the
other? What?
Americans trust Russia to take them to the International Space Station after NASA shut down their?
So I don't know if anyone told this guy. Cold War is over. Cold War's over. We have different political interests in Russia, but we're not, like, we don't refuse to collaborate on scientific endeavors. That's not how that is anymore. Cold War's over.
Their space shuttle missions, and now they pay them $80 million per passenger per each way, right? So you are trusting your biggest adversary to take you to space, and now
Well, I don't know that Russia is not our biggest adversary. The Cold War ended, dude. China is much more of a political adversary than Russia at this point. But also, we can trust the Russians to do that because they're operating based on the science that works, and not because, like, of ideological agreement.
Sharing information with them, and come on, we're going back to the 60s. Do you know the 60s were the most untrusted era in time? Your president at the time.
What does that even mean? The 60s were the most untrusted era period. What does that mean? What do you mean? What is that?
Nixon was the most untrusted president.
I don't know if he knows
ever.
Nixon wasn't the president the whole time.
Ever.
Also,
Right?
that's not true.
We can't trust him, and now we're going back to, and that's why I'm doing Test the Curve Day. And I told Mike, I'll let you speak, so don't do that.
No, you said Nixon was the most untrusted president. No, second most untrusted president. There's another one.
All right, yeah, let's do a poll on that. There are many.
Oh, now he's running cover. I'd bet you anything that this guy is a Trump supporter. Of course he is. As I mentioned, there's this tendency. Spoilers for the searching for a flat Earth. Flat Earthers have largely gotten lumped into QAnon.
Have there been any trusted ones? Is what we should really be asking. That's the question. And that's why I'm doing Test the Curve. Like, yeah, are we going to really go back and trust the Russians in the 1960s? You weren't even born, man. Neither was I. Actually, I was born in 1970.
Things that happened before we're born we can't trust. So you don't think that computer technology... Well, I don't know. Maybe you were alive when... No, you couldn't have been alive when computers were invented because Alan Turing was at it. So you don't think, like, computers, like, work or are real? Right? What the fuck are you talking about?
So anything before the first moon mission, I didn't see that. Do you really think they went to the moon?
This is another thing, by the way, that you should recognize from when we watched that creationist debate. Is creationists do this all the time also, where they'll say, like, oh, you didn't see it yourself, therefore it can't be true. And I was like, well, as it turns out, we have systems in place to, like, determine, and we can trust each other. As it turns out, not everyone's trying to lie to you all the time. And again, why would all of these people be motivated to lie about this thing that serves no benefit for anybody?
Do you really think they went to the moon?
America, yes.
Yeah. Big surprise. Flat Earthers tend to not believe in the moon landing.
Okay, yes. What about China a few years ago?
One of my favorite conspiracy theory centrist positions is that the United States did, in fact, fake the moon landing, and yes, they did hire Stanley Kubrick to direct it, but he was such a perfectionist that he demanded to shoot on site. Oh, it's so good. I love it. It's my favorite.
No.
Yes, probably.
Did you
I haven't
probably have you
researched
seen that footage?
it. No, I haven't researched at all.
Man, you got to
Until I
research
started
that, mate, and that's why I've done.
And when he says you
5
got to
years-
research that, what he means is find the people who are trying to nitpick it for things that they don't understand so that they can dismiss it.
of research on this.
And by the way, there's no escape from this. There is no amount of evidence. There's no amount of research you could do. So I'm not going to impugn T-Jump here for not like having researched the appropriate thing. You don't know what stuff he's going to push back on, and there's no amount of research you could do that would satisfy him, because obviously the only evidence he accepts is flat Earth evidence. So even if T-Jump knew literally everything it's possible to know about this subject, and like, yes, I've researched that and I've researched this, it wouldn't matter to this guy. So it's not a bad thing that T-Jump didn't like research this thing. Like, it sucks that it came up, but like there was going to be a thing that Billy pushed back against and that T-Jump hadn't researched to his appropriate, because then you go, yeah, I researched the moon landing. Oh, did you research like the construction of the craft? No, why would I? Oh, because like, you know, there's always something.
I was like you. I was very defensive against.
You'd have to know everything about everything to satisfy a conspiracist.
Against this. I didn't want it to be this. I don't want it to be this, man. And you know, you ask why. Why wouldn't they come out and tell us? That's the biggest question. That's philosophy. That's like
That's not philosophy. That's conspiracy.
You know, that's the biggest question of all.
So you don't have an answer for that.
Let's not do that one. Let's take it.
Oh, so the thing that like is the crux of your conspiracy, right? Without it, your conspiracy does not work, right? It wouldn't make any sense instead you're going to say, let's just assume that, like, let's just move past it. I'm going to assume that we're being lied to for no reason. And now I'm going to try and now because I know, like, now because I've done that, I don't have to worry about like why they're lying to me. I can just say that they are.
Step by step. So we're talking about China, we're talking about Russia and America, and that they proved that but it went before that. You've got to go back about 2,500 years ago when Aristotle was around, and even, you know, other Greek guys at the time who were postulating, because they you know, they wanted it to be a ball. A lot of them, if you look at the,
did they, or did they want to just know?
The way atom, you know, they devised atoms 2,500 years ago, and you talked about Newtonian mechanics, but we know that that's all wrong.
Well, no, it's not wrong. It's incomplete.
We know that's wrong now. Now they're going to quantum theories, and quanta is taken right over. And you know, we're working out.
I'm so glad we encountered this before, because as we've already learned on this stream, no, Newtonian physics works at this scale. And in fact, if you take quantum the formulas for like quantum physics and scale them up, they resemble Newtonian physics. And if you take relativistic physics and scale it down, it resembles Newtonian physics.
Not mechanics. These orbits are not mechanics. You know, go and watch some videos into this holographic theory, and I reckon you'd resonate quite well with them, because it could work well with, you know, there being evolution.
And I'd like to note at this point, he still has not given one shred of evidence, not even attempted to, not an argument, not an experiment you've done, just to say that, hey, yes, here's evidence that the Earth is flat. Instead, he'll dismiss evidence, not even like finding real issues with it, just dismissing evidence on the basis of political desire that he can't demonstrate, and allude and mention that he's keep doing these experiments and he's still a flat earther, but we don't know what they are. We don't know how flawed they are. He's not giving the results of those. He's just saying, like, we keep doing it. He's not making any actual arguments.
A non-creator, and this could be a holographic universe, which is what a lot of scientists are talking about now. So if it's a holograph, how's it a ball?
Okay, that one was new. I wasn't ready for that one. So, like, a holographic universe, as I understand it, is one where, like, it's actually, no, I'm not sure I do understand it. I don't want to say anything. Entry from order. No, that's the holographic principle. Okay. Holographic university theory? Wait, no, stop. Stop going here. Uh, uh, a holographic universe means information that makes up what we perceive as 3D reality is stored on a 2D surface, including time. This means essentially everything is an illusion. Okay, sure. But, like, I guess everything would be two-dimensional, but, like, the Earth would still, as far as we talk about things being three-dimensional, it would still be, right? Like, then you'd say, like, nothing is three-dimensional, but he wouldn't say that, I don't think. What the hell? All right. Those are the projections you were talking about before. I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, some of them think other planets are mere projections. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so.
Yes, so
And more to the point, where's the
following-
curve? Where's the curve, man? Have you gone? Where do you live, Tom?
All right,
How far
Screeching,
from the
where's the
ocean do you
curve?
live?
Minnesota, about
You're in the middle of
1,300 miles.
Yeah, you're in the middle of the country. I live 700 meters from the beach, which is something like
Okay.
1,000 feet.
Okay. I live closer to water, so I'm right. Oh my god. Really funny coming from someone who's likely a QAnoner, given that the left is accused of thinking this way, because all the left-leaning cities are. There's a joke of like your proximity to water is directly related to how left-leaning you are. It's not actually the case, but it's like kind of funny.
And I go there every day, and I measure, and I look.
You
and
measure?
I
What do you
observe
measure?
Every day, and there's no curve. So Melbourne, Australia. If you look up Melbourne and the Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne, it's one of the largest inland bays in the world. Right?
Okay.
2,000 feet, right? 2,100 feet, about 700 meters.
Okay, T-Jump, that's not the point.
Yeah,
Don't
sorry, 700
nitpick
meters,
about
you
his
should say,
conversion of,
times
set, of
20
meters to
2100
feet. It doesn't matter.
It's a 10-minute walk up the road. That's all it is. Two-minute drive. So sorry, I said 700 meters.
It doesn't
like
matter. It
2100
doesn't matter. God damn it.
All right, so yeah, I'm not really following much of what you said. Like, Newtonian mechanics was just less accurate than general and special relativity, and quantum
Less
mechanics.
accurate. Relativity blew it away, man. Let's not go there.
No,
Let's
it
not do
didn't
that,
blow.
'cause that's-
Oh, let's not go there. Let's not interrogate that I was wrong about this thing. Let's just let me just extrapolate from the incorrect statement, and then let's move on.
what the debate is about.
Well, no, that's the point. Is that
Let's
I'm
talk
not
about curvature and whether you
following.
seen the curvature of the Earth, or whether
That's right. That's right. But I'm not following how anything you said has anything.
So this question, this challenge from Billy of like, let's talk about the curvature and how you yourself have seen the curvature of the Earth, because now he's going back to like, oh, you're like, just trust your eyes, yada yada, etc. But like, if T-Jump had some proof for the shape of the Earth that like, you know, you could do yourself, like I said, you can, you know, oh, I've seen this effect or whatever, and there are ways of doing that. Then he can say, yeah, I've done it myself, and like, now you don't have this issue, because he's of course going to dismiss all evidence from any source that is going to say like, oh, look, we have proof. It has to come from you, but for the audience, it's important to have the stuff T-Jump had. So like, I wouldn't cut any of what T-Jump had in his opening. I would just add an experiment that can demonstrate it, and you can say you've done. Doesn't matter if you have.
To do with.
I brought up Newtonian mechanics because you brought up Newton earlier,
Right.
and you know Newton.
No, you brought up Newtonian mechanics to imply that just because we know a thing, often it can be wrong, and like, therefore we can't trust science. That's what you did.
The R value in his formula. Do you know where he got that from?
Math.
He didn't, yeah, and you don't get it from. He assumed it from Eratosthenes. Likewise, did Cavendish. These guys didn't go and test the curvature of the Earth and prove what their predecessors had done and their experiments that they'd done. That's wrong. That's not how you science.
Yes,
sure,
they
you
did.
can't go and reproduce every experiment. But when you know that your predecessors didn't have the equipment, nor did they have a telescope, because the telescope wasn't invented to like 14.
Well, a telescope isn't strictly necessary for determining the shape of the thing you're standing on. A telescope actually wouldn't help whatsoever. But but also like a lot of this technology is like super necessary. In fact, you can do it just by drawing shapes. This is something that Lawrence Krauss talked about once. So if you were to draw, he talks. So I've heard Lawrence Krauss talk about this in reference to measuring the shape of the universe. But if you were to draw a triangle on a surface, you would ask, okay, what are the degrees of the angles on the interior of the triangle? It should add up to 180, right? That's Euclidean geometry. But that's only true if it's on a flat surface. What if I drew a triangle on a curved surface? So this is a good example here. If you draw a triangle that starts at the North Pole, goes to the equator, cuts across some large number of miles, and then comes back up to the North Pole. Here's a triangle, but if you measure the angles, it will add up to more than 180 degrees because it's on a sphere. It's the shape like kind of pushes outwards basically. This is something you could very easily do. Now it has to be a really large triangle to do this, but you can do that. Krauss was talking about it in terms of like measuring the shape of the universe, but you can do it for the shape of the Earth as well. And you don't need a telescope. You just need the ability to measure a large amount, right? But I mean that's very doable.
92 by Hans Lippershey. So how the heck did they trust their?
Oh, and by the way, it doesn't have to be a triangle that goes to the North Pole. You could any sufficiently large triangle. You should have that same effect.
Trust these Greeks anyway? Like really? They trusted Greeks with their math 2,500 years ago.
Why wouldn't you? Math is universal. That's kind of the point. If there's a problem with the math, you can check it. But if it stands up, then the math is right. It doesn't matter when it was done.
With sticks and shadows, which apparently is going to be reproduced in a couple of weeks.
No, and he's like dismissing out of hand the sticks and shadows experiment that I was just talking about. Like, you can do this. You can just do this. And I'm like, why? If this guy is so committed to proving, why hasn't he tried to do this experiment? It will demonstrate conclusively that he's wrong.
Make testable predictions. So what we do is we create a hypothesis. Then we make a prediction. We say, if this hypothesis is correct, here's the prediction. Here's what the results are going to be. And if we get it right, then we say, oh, their math was right because it successfully made a prediction. If we got the prediction wrong, then we'd be like, oh, they were wrong, so we need to make new math. But because they consistently got it right, every prediction we made was right. Then Newton was like, oh, yeah, these guys' math, it's right.
He's right, but it's not a terribly convincing argument. He's not, like I said, I agree. And, like, it makes sense what he's saying. It's just one of those, like, it feels like a weak argument of, like, oh, just because it worked out, lots of things, this guy can hand wave it. You can go further, but I think it's insufficient as an argument unto itself, just on the level of being convincing, even though I think it's correct and a good argument.
These predictions that keep being correct over and over again. So that's why Newton used those maths, because they work. That's how science works, is that you make predictions, and if those predictions...
And for what it's worth, that's like basically as I understand it, really the only way we can know that science is like, if it works, if it comes up with novel testable predictions, then that's really the only way we have of determining if it's correct.
And whatever the starting hypothesis was, that's a good reason to accept it. So that's why.
That's cool. I like what you said. I like that, Tom. And sorry to interrupt. I noticed someone said Billy keeps interrupting.
Hand waves it.
Please feel free. If you've got a word to say halfway through my sentence, just say that word. Don't go and take over the whole.
Completely off topic. Just not going to address it. You see what I mean? It's because it's not that convincing. He can just move past it.
Dialogia in Greek. Two words, two people conversing with one another, and I don't want to.
Now he's just responding to someone in chat who was like, "Stop interrupting." Okay, let's move on.
Get it in there. But when you said if, he said if, you said if the math was correct, if, and that's a big thing. What if it's not?
But then it wouldn't have worked.
These false assumptions all the way, and that's why we're here. That's why we're here going, hey, we thought we live on a ball. And what if they, along the way, the question is why, and why wouldn't they tell us? But we'll get there. Don't worry. We'll all in good time.
No, he won't. You already said
But
you don't
what
want
if it's
to.
wrong? What if it's wrong?
If the math was wrong,
Then it
we
wouldn't work.
wouldn't be able to make predictions.
Right.
That's
Which
how we know it's not
predictions?
wrong.
Sorry
Like,
to interrupt.
There's lots of them. So Newton was explaining all kinds of things about the rotation of the planets, created an entire model of calculus based on explaining how the
one easy one, by the way, is oh no, that's geocentrism. Never mind.
orbits of the planets around the sun, and all of his predictions were correct related to that model.
He didn't even know the distance of the
Hold
sun,
on one
though.
sec, just to be
Tom.
sure that we for sure get to hear the rest from Tom.
By the way, like something really easy, geographic measurements wouldn't make sense. Because of that whole triangle thing, like our distances would be completely different if the Earth was flat.
Yeah,
Well, that's right.
sorry.
He didn't. There's lots of things he didn't know, which makes the fact that he got them right so much more amazing. The fact that he knew so little and he could get so much right with that with so little is really good evidence that everything he was using is correct. That's why it was accepted. So he didn't actually need to know everything that would actually make it less impressive. The fact that he only knew a little bit and just had the math to base his predictions on and got them right every single time is really good evidence that everything he was using was correct, not incorrect.
However, Einstein's theory of relativity totally debunks his theory of
No,
gravity.
it
So
doesn't.
which gravity we're going to? Yeah, it does. It does actually, man.
No.
No, it actually doesn't, my
my
dude.
Gravity for a few things, but you can't. It doesn't. It doesn't answer. It's not the be all, and that's why Einstein came around.
Also, like, if this guy wants to start talking about gravity, start being like, hey, let's talk about gravity on a flat Earth model. You think down is somehow special, and that's why things just go down, and not that they're attracted to large mass, right? And no, it didn't disprove his like. One of the things that's rough is that the more honest you are about the science, the harder it is to argue with the flat earther in this particular regard, because as I understand it, gravity is one of the four forces in the universe, and it's the only one we do not completely understand. That's what I understand. Which is kind of funny because you'd think that's the one we understand the most, but no, actually, it's the one we understand the least. But that's only that's if you're being honest about it in the way that the flat earther will never be, right? And so it's not helpful to build in the doubt that a scientist would have when this person is not talking about the same kind of doubt. He just wants to dismiss it because he knows that it's a problem for him.
And had to come up with his theory.
No,
of
this is.
space-time.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is why I said Newtonian mechanics isn't wrong. It's just less accurate. So it's like if you can gauge the distance of like how far away that baseball is to within 1 meter or something, that's not wrong. It's only just right within error range of 1 meter. Whereas Newtonian mechanics, that's what Newtonian mechanics was. Whereas general relativity could gauge it in between like with 1 inch. So it's just more accurate. It isn't wrong. Newtonian predictions were not wrong. They were just less accurate than general relativity's predictions, which are also right.
And at the scales that we encounter, as I understand it, Newtonian physics is to our scale completely accurate. Like it works. There aren't problems.
So general relativity didn't overthrow Newtonian mechanics. It's just more accurate in certain cases. We still use Newtonian mechanics for everything in everyday life. It's not like it stopped being right. It's still right. We can't
And you can
use
test
when
it.
We're trying to get down to the
It's just the different scales that has
0.0000001
problems.
degree of accuracy, which is what we need general and special relativity for. But they're both right still.
Do you know how far Newton thought the distance of the sun was?
Nope.
And it doesn't matter.
Does it matter?
Nope. Not even
Why?
a little.
Because
Because
his
you can reverse
predictions.
engineer the math, can't you?
Well, not necessarily.
What?
Newtonian physics doesn't help you with measurements, right? Like the things we know he was right about, we know he was right about, and the things we know he was wrong about, we know he was wrong about. I don't know why. Yeah, it's like a complete diversion, but no, it doesn't matter.
And that's what he said. He said the same. He said, I care not whether the distance of the sun is 13 or 26 million miles away or something like that. It matters not. The math still works out the same. But it's actually 96 million. Well, that's at perihelion, and aphelion 99 or something. So the math still works.
This is, by the way, a thing he if he holds that's true, the distance from the sun that the Earth is. If he holds that true, that's like massively a problem for flat Earth models because again, like sunshine during the day and the night is an issue they have to solve, and the further it is away, the less sense it makes. So I would also bet that this guy probably rejects that measurement as well. But the flat earthers do this all the time, and so do creationists. Basically, every pseudoscience-based conspiracy theory will do this, where they will accept an observation only so that they can disprove something, and then later they will reject it because it's a problem for them. Like they don't actually care what's true.
Yeah, well, that's something that you actually can't prove yourself. So that's why test the curve day is important. Test the curve day means that you can go out and do this.
And now, like, notice instead of making arguments at any point about the proof, he instead keeps shilling his test the curve day to try to get people to come watch it. Right? It's like I don't know if it's a grift but like it's just self promotion here. That's what he's here to do.
Let's revert
because this is something that's been observed by other smarter people. Innuendo Studios talks about this in his alt-right playbook, which is a great series. We're talking about like on the left, we think of debate as like two people arguing the points and both reaching the truth together. But on the right, it's not what it is. It's about keeping eyes on you. It's about power. It's about dominance. And so like here, that's what's happening. I don't know that he's a grifter. He seems to be a true believer, but why does he keep shilling his event, right? It's because it's about keeping eyes on you. It's about the attention. It's about coming out on top and being the stronger, the victorious, not about actually like debating and arguing and proving anything.
There are now over 200 million flat earthers around the world. 11 or 12 million in Brazil alone.
I guess in the analogy that I've used before, that where I say debate is kind of like verbal or intellectual martial arts. This is the guy who gets into the ring solely so that people will like so he can get onto the Wheaties box or whatever. So he can have the book deal and the sponsorship and people like coming to his gym or whatever after the fact. But he does not care about actually fighting in any reasonable way. That's in that analogy. This is kind of what's happening.
That's concerning, don't you reckon?
He just wants to look like he's a good fighter.
I think there are billions of people who believe very silly things. I mean, there are billions of Christians, so I'm not particularly concerned that there are lots of people who believe silly things. But I'm not.
I'm literally talking to a flat
earther.
Right?
The reason that the distance of the sun doesn't matter is because you can do the math regardless of the distance of the sun. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't. It's not that the equations are the same and the results are the same regardless of the distance of the sun. It's the fact that you can do the math regardless of the distance of the sun. So you get different answers depending on how far away the sun is.
So he didn't have the facts, and at age 23 he died without the facts, right? He died because he was an alchemist. I think he used to drink mercury. Pretty smart guy, huh?
See, there it is, right? He just wants to denigrate, like, he's going to use anything he can, denigrate the findings of science. Yeah, how smart could he possibly have been? He drank mercury. He believed in alchemy, yada, yada, etc. But, like, people can believe true things and false things. But Billy is acting like, if this guy believes one wacky thing, why would we trust anything he said? Even though T-Jump is saying it's not based on his reputability, it's based on that his predictions worked. The alchemy stuff didn't, so it's dismissed and disregarded. The physics equations do, and so we use those and we work with them. But Billy just wants to dismiss all of science because he knows that it proves him wrong. Again, an aspect of pseudoscience conspiracism. The more someone wants to reject science writ large, like we saw with Del Bigtree, by the way, the better it is, better evidence it is that they're not actually trying to prove anything, and they're not actually trying to make arguments, right? Like he's willing, both he and Del Bigtree are willing to dismiss all of science because they have their one conclusion they will not part with, irrespective of evidence. He saw that the alchemy didn't work, so he moved on. Did he? I thought he like thoroughly a believer in alchemy. Well, if that's the case, then that's even better. But like, you know, the point here has nothing to do with whether that's true or not. You know, he just wants to, like, Billy just wants to reject the concept of science because it proves him wrong.
Make gold.
He wants to invent his own science, which is just we start with the Earth is flat, and then we develop a system that proves it.
Again,
Integrate
totally not
Mercury at
following.
23, and then he used, and then going back, Eratosthenes didn't even know the distance of the
I
sun.
may remember, but I
Did
thought
the
he
stick
realized
and
alchemy was
shadow.
futile. I mean, maybe it doesn't really matter. I don't know or care. Like, I'm willing to take your word on it. It doesn't really matter to this conversation. I'm more interested in how the claim is being used, I guess. I mean, we can look it up. I just don't particularly care at the moment.
And if we go back to that one's a beauty, because you know you get some people. So, the stick and shadow experiment. It wasn't even done with sticks and shadows. It was done. Carl Sagan said it was done with obelisks. Some other guy said it was a combination of obelisks and sticks and wells, and you know, which one is it? Is that a good experiment?
Does it matter? What would matter? We have a thing that is sticking straight up relative to the ground, is perpendicular to the ground, and we can measure its shadow. It would not matter if it's an obelisk or a stick, as long as it is perpendicular to the ground.
If I said I drove 1,000 miles and I did it in 2 hours, well, how'd you do that? Oh yeah, one day I said I used a Ferrari, next day I said I used a Porsche, and next day I used a friggin', you know,
It was
McLaren. Which one is it?
it was done multiple.
But it wouldn't
times.
matter.
Combination of
It
a
was,
few.
no, it was.
But
done
also,
multiple
you can also do it yourself. Why haven't you tried doing it?
times over.
And I know he hasn't tried doing it because if he did, he would have to reckon with the fact that it demonstrates he's wrong.
For a long period for many different people with obelisks, yes. With wells, yes. With sticks, yes.
That's not the story, Tom. It's one
Yes, it
man.
is.
But it doesn't matter what the story is, Billy.
Genius was done in.
See, again, this is a misunderstanding. He thinks science is a story. It doesn't matter whether the story is completely accurate. It's whether the observation is provable and repeatable. And it is. You can do it. Go do it.
One particular way. You have to Google it to find out which one it was, but it wasn't. It's not like a vast array of possibilities. You did it in one way.
No, that's not the story.
No, he's saying it never happened at all, but also isn't going to go do it.
That too. I thought that was the way too. I thought that was the case too. You should do. How much research have you done on this topic? In all honesty.
See, now he's impugning. Now this is a guy's ad hominem. It's you don't know what you're talking about. So you haven't done the appropriate amount of research. To impugn T-Jump is like, oh well, clearly you don't know enough. But it didn't. As I mentioned before, it wouldn't matter how much T-Jump knew about this. If T-Jump knew about this specific weird bugaboo of his, where he's like, oh, this experiment was told a million different. Even if T-Jump had heard this before and knew about this specific thing, they'll find another thing to be like, oh, you clearly don't know what you're talking about. Because if you think he's wrong, to him, you can't know what you're talking about.
Sides. Not one side, both sides.
Both sides? I'm not sure what you mean. Like,
Look
I've
at
done
what
research
Earth is
into
saying.
cosmology and astrophysics and physics and theoretical physics and all kinds of things related to how physics works. Which, I mean, that's just the globe earther side. So I know the world is a globe for a fact. It's the only option. Like, you can't do physics without all of the math.
Can't do physics. Yes, you can, man. You can.
Yeah, you
Even the Eratosthenes
Just yes, you can. But like, okay.
experiment, you can do that based on a localized sun or a distant sun. Neil deGrasse Tyson said that. He actually said that with his own words.
Right. I grant
And
that.
what about
but you can't do physics, like astrophysics and cosmology and the actual modern physics. You can't do that with flat Earth models at all. You can do none of
You're
it.
right.
And also, like, just as a note, you'd have to have an explanation for why the Earth is flat and no other celestial body is. Right? Like, that's something like among the problems is why is this thing different and how does it manage to operate in a way that works when everything else seems to work differently.
Can't tell without astrophysics, because I just saw there was an article yesterday that said they found 8.8 habitable planets.
An argument besides holograms.
Way.
Yeah, like, and remember, like, there's so much extrapolated stuff that, like, so many things that would have to be the case for the flat Earth model that he's just not going to talk about because he's not even trying to prove anything, right? He's just screeching about like how the round Earth isn't it, like, no, you're wrong, no, that's not true, or whatever. But like as we talked about before, like let me see if I can find it. With the sun. Here. Once you're a flat earther, once you think like this is more or less what the world looks like, you also have to be a geocentrist. Because the Earth can't revolve around the sun, can't be spinning, and that's why we have the day-night. Because then, like, half the time the back of the Earth, it's daytime for everyone, then it's nighttime for everyone, and half the time the back of the Earth has the sun on it. That doesn't work, right? So the Earth has to be fixed in place. They'd have to believe, which means the sun has to rotate above it like this, and somehow only give daylight to certain parts of it. And then the moon also has to do that, but weirdly, like, somehow there are lunar eclipses where the Earth gets in the way. How is that possible? Like, there are so many problems with this model. Oh, here. Yeah, this is how they think the sun works. I'm not kidding. This is how they think the sun works. No. It's not actually an image. Where, like, it's over this part of the world so you can see it, and the light just, like, arbitrarily stops at this line for reasons. I don't know. This is what we're talking about, like, why things work in the globe model and do not work in the flat Earth model. This is nonsense. There's no reason why, like, physics does not give any indication why this should be happening. But it would be what would have to happen if the Earth was flat. Yeah, like, and notice like how differently shaped everything has to be for things to, like, look at Antarctica. It has to be this giant mass of, like, that's like many millions of miles larger, or maybe not millions, millions of square miles larger than we measure it to be for this to be the case, you know? And, like, it would mean no one would have ever gone past, like, this small distance from the water to the edge of the Earth into Antarctica, which I'm sure we have. Oh, I didn't realize what that white part was. Haha. Yeah, that's what that white part is. That's the ice barrier that keeps all the water in. It's Antarctica. Because we know it's down there, and we know, like, the South Pole would be... By the way, they can't believe in a South Pole, because where the fuck would that be? That's just the edge of the world, right? Like, there are so many extrapolations that come from a flat Earth model that just are complete nonsense. Do not work, cannot be justified. But notice instead he only wants to talk about the, like, that you can't prove the globe Earth. Not even that he can even say that it's wrong, just that you can't prove it's true because he's willing to dismiss any evidence. His actual argument, like, boiled down, is that you cannot present evidence to me that I will accept. That's actually the argument he's made. Not that the Earth is flat, just you cannot present evidence that I will not dismiss. It's about will and not about truth for people like this. This is like another conspiracist thing.
8 billion. That's one for each person. These astrophysicists are assuming there's 8.8 billion planets out there that we can live on. Is that true?
We don't. That number could be higher or lower.
About 5 to 6.
But he can visit the pole.
Not...
Making my way downtown. Hey, what's up? Making my way. I don't know if is the South Pole accessible. I guess that's another thing we could ask. I don't know. I don't, because I know Antarctica is massively hostile to like as I understand it, when there are, because I know there are research stations there. It's like if you go there and if you're at a research center in Antarctica and winter starts, that's it. You're not leaving until winter's over. Like, it's literally impossible, is my understanding. I don't know why it changed this. You can visit Antarctica. That's not what I'm asking. Oh, no, yeah, you can go to the South Pole. Okay, I was mistaken. Yeah, you can actually go there. Which would be literally impossible in a flat Earth model, but you can literally go there. Now he'd have to say like it's a lie, right? Like that's not actually you're just going to some place and you can. But like you could demonstrate where you were with a number of ways, including like GPS, which he also has to dismiss or whatever. They're expensive cruises you could take. Well, I thought you could go to Australia. I didn't know the South Pole was accessible. Like I thought it was too hostile to really be able to get there. But I guess it is possible to go to the South Pole. It's actually on this map. It doesn't seem like that far from from the ocean. The current trendy conspiracies give real conspiracy a bad name. I'm curious what you mean. What you mean by that? Making my way downtown. Are you walking fast? I don't know what to call. I'm just gonna call you downtown. It's the whole thing is too long.
Well, just yesterday, 8.8 billion planets they reckon. Because every day.
That's an estimate based off of the 6,000 we've actually found that are within the habitable zone. And then we estimate based off of the ones we have found. If we ban that.
Yeah, again, he's an issue. If you don't do it yourself, it's not real.
Beings,
okay, buddy.
The entire collection of human beings, we have found like 5,000 to 6,000 habitable planets in the.
Oh, and quick shilling for my soft break. Downtown. If you're new here, welcome. Feel free to hit that follow button. As you see, we have a counter. If I get partnered on Kick, I will punish myself by making a cup of tea with either salt or pepper in it instead of sugar. So if you wanna hop on board making me suffer, feel free to hit that follow button if you haven't already. Just so much spoon-fed rumor and reporting getting swallowed. I can't say as that helps me understand what you're trying to say too much. I guess I'm curious what conspiracy theory you found. Well, much appreciated. I appreciate the follow. Thank you. I'm curious if there's like a conspiracy that you find more reasonable, and if you find this one or like which of the ones you take issue with. I'm curious. I'm curious now.
Zone of other stars that could support life, and based off of that, in the area of search that we can access, if we expand that to the level of the galaxy, we get this number. We haven't actually found that many.
It's just math, isn't it? You just expand things, don't you? Just go, based on this, it could be that. And these guys, really, do you really believe all of that? Come on, I used to as well one day. But you believe it all. You believe we haven't been there? We haven't been there. We haven't been back to the moon. We can't even get past the Van Allen radiation belts. But you reckon they could work all this out and they've done all this? It's fine. Let's go. Let's get our heads out of the
and notice his you think it's really real? I don't have a reason to I don't have an argument for why it is impossible. Just like it's so ridiculous to me, and it has to be fake for his belief to hold, which is really where he's coming from it. Q's blueprint, COVID origins, and the Wuhan setup, mass election fraud. If those are the ones you think are like real, or if I guess it depends on like if you think those are like the new trendy conspiracies, like I agree they're nonsense, but or those the ones that you actually believe? In which case, oh boy, do we have disagreements, friend?
Back onto Earth, right? Let's test the Earth.
I'm not even sure what you mean by Q's blueprint.
Should be proven. Should be done at school. Everyone should be doing. Everyone should know how to test the curve. Should be given.
By the way, I don't hate that idea. Like people are just told the thing, and this is back to the thing I've discussed before, where science is often taught like religion, where you're just told like this is true. I agree. Instead, we should be like, here's how you can find out the thing. Here's an experiment we can do. These are the things that are possible to do in a classroom. Some of them. Alternatively, some of them could be like, here's a field trip that we're gonna go do or whatever. But you think they're real, but they're alternative answers. Ooh. We're not going to see eye to eye. I look forward to it. That's exciting. I appreciate when people don't agree with me. Pop in. But yeah, I agree. Like we should be teaching how to do experiments and like, maybe you can't do this with everything, right? Obviously, you can't prove literally everything that you're going to teach in a school. But yeah, we should like, here's how you could do this. Even if it's just like, I wouldn't say a homework assignment. I wouldn't make it mandatory, but like, here's like fun extra credit if you want to do. Here's an experiment to like see the shape of the Earth. Like that'd be cool. I think that'd be a good thing to have in schools. For what it's worth, Billy, it would prove you wrong, but whatever. Um,
Stars there are in the sky, how many planets we can live on right now in the sky. Let's test this Earth. Why
again,
are people
there's
saying
no
further
no
they
need
should?
to. The
Why?
way
We don't need to.
we test a hypothesis, we say if our hypothesis is true, we make predictions, and if those predictions are correct, that confirms the hypothesis.
And what if they're not correct then, Tom?
Then
the
hypothesis is wrong.
then
So
we have
forget it.
failed to reject the null
Exactly, because
hypothesis,
we
but
could
you
see
haven't demonstrated any problems with the globe Earth model. You've simply rejected all science and made no effort to demonstrate either your position or an actual flaw in the round Earth model.
Further than we could. Have you seen what the
No, so
world
that's false.
record
So
long
that's
distance
immediately false.
photo?
Like anything you explain on Earth is already fully explained by the globe model. That's done. You can go bother.
How does it
Go
explain?
bother the physicists.
How does it
about that.
explain?
So we know there's an easier way to know that the globe Earth is right, which is because all of the math and physics created by globe Earth math works.
What's unfortunate here is that there's not really a solution to just alluding generally to the existence of that math and physics. I mean, maybe you could find a couple of examples, but it'd be hard to demonstrate all the things that are extrapolated or why they're extrapolated. It would take kind of a long time, and this guy isn't going to sit through it. But it does look like you're just pointing vaguely at a thing that might not be real, and he certainly thinks isn't real.
And there is no alternative.
Okay.
So everything explained in physics is explained by globe Earth math, and it works, and it makes predictions which are correct every single time, and there is no alternative. It's just that simple. If you create an alternative that can do it, go for it, but you haven't. Just saying that, oh, well, we can explain all the stuff we see in a different way does nothing to help your hypothesis. All of that is explained on the globe Earth model completely without any failure. No one has any problem with that. So saying that, oh, well, we can see farther because of, well, we shouldn't be able to see that far, but we can because the refraction of light or whatever, we have no problem with this. There's nothing we see on Earth that is any problem for the globe model at all.
And Billy hasn't even made the slightest attempt to present a thing that doesn't make sense in the globe model. He hasn't even tried.
Observation on Earth causes any problem for the globe model at all. It's all fully explained by the globe model. So none of the challenges you bring are relevant to the globe model at all. It's we already knew all this. Why are you pointing to us, telling us all this stuff we already knew and we already explained 100 years ago?
We explained it hundreds of years ago.
Yes, human.
He keeps getting tripped up by that. Chijump has been very clear. When he says we, he means humans, a group of which he is a part. Yeah, it's fine for him to say that.
See, I'm not doing a we from hundreds of years ago. I'm doing a now. I go every day, every second day to the beach with my
Cool,
people.
you go there, but you haven't demonstrated.
No, this
You
is
haven't
baby.
even attempted to present any of your findings. I'm sure there are problems with them, but you haven't even told us what they are. You've just said you go there and you make observations and you're right. You haven't even you're just relying on us to be like, well, he says he's right, so I guess he must be. That's the best
Test
argument
stuff, man.
you've
You know
had.
how far this could see? 83 times Zoom.
Oh,
83
okay.
times, mate. Go and get
Oh,
one.
it
Go and get one,
exists.
go
All right,
produce
now
it.
what?
And then
It exists. What have you used it for that would be a problem?
Refraction of light, which you're telling me when I see things, they're not really there. They're behind the curve. When I see a man at the end of the street, he's not really there. Even though I know that ground is perfectly level, he's not really standing at the end of the street when I zoom in with that camera. No, he's behind the curve of the earth. Do you know how ridiculous that
Well,
is?
down the street isn't far enough. So as I understand it, it's about 3 miles before the curve of the Earth gets in your way. So and height has to do with that. So it's I think it's about 3 miles out. You'll no longer be able to see the ground, right? But then if something is 2 inches above the ground, well, you might be able to see that. Something would have to be pretty far for you to not be able to see it. It wouldn't be someone down the street, is what I'm saying, right? It would be someone on the other side of the town. But then there are other things that you wouldn't necessarily one, you wouldn't see him, but you wouldn't be acting I know he's there because whatever. This is someone pretty far that you if the context that he's giving is someone a few blocks away. Well, that's possible. That's not that far, right? That's not 3 miles or whatever.
This camera could zoom 60, 100 kilometers. We could see, like, do you know what the world record long distance photo is?
No.
No.
So-
440 kilometers.
Okay.
273 miles.
Okay.
Google it. Why don't you know this?
All right, let's Google it. You know what? All right. Longest line of sight on Earth photographed. First of all, this is Guinness. This is not like necessarily reputable, but 443 kilometers, Spain. The longest line of sight Earth photograph achieved by Marc Brett Guma from Pictofilm, Spain. Okay. To France on the why wouldn't they show the picture? The photograph was taken using this camera, following lengthy preparations and selecting optimal date and location. The image was captured when the sun was rising behind this thing, and to help increase the visibility of its peaks of this peaks on the horizon. Oh, so it's these are mountains that we're seeing, so they're very tall. Picture was taken from in the Pyrenees Mountains in a mountain system. So elevation is another thing. Flat earthers always forget to factor in very obvious things about, like, oh, why can't I see? You're higher up. So on a ball, if you're higher up, you can see further down. Like, what? Can we see the center? Okay, and the center of the Alps can be seen in the center 443 kilometers away. Very few places on Earth where it's possible to extend the line of sight so far. Due to the curvature of the Earth, both the observer and the object must be at sufficiently high altitudes for the object to be visible at long range. The higher the observer is, the further they may see before the point where the Earth curves out of sight, otherwise known as the horizon. Even here. Like, it's so obvious. If the Earth had a uniform radius with no mountains and valleys, and an individual 6 feet in height would view the horizon to be 5 kilometers away from them. Yeah. I don't know why they don't have the picture. Okay. Yeah, I feel like they should have the picture. But yeah, as I expected, elevation was a big factor. And I'm guessing that the mountain in the Alps that they were talking about also was pretty small, right? Like, it was pretty low, like close to the horizon at that point, at that distance. I think this is it. Yeah. Okay. Here's the picture, and like, look how close to the horizon these mountains are. Yeah. Okay. Glad we Googled it. He's obviously wrong. But, like, if you don't know this, like, to be able to find this on the fly, I don't know.
Why would I need to know this?
Why
Because
shouldn't you? Because this is all groundbreaking stuff. It just happened a couple of years ago.
None of that is groundbreaking. Like, none of that
It's
is.
groundbreaking,
When
man.
did it
It's
happen?
groundbreaking. It is groundbreaking. That's why I won the
2016,
world record, right? They don't give world records to non-groundbreaking stuff.
That's not true at all. Guinness gives world records to all sorts of shit. They don't monitor it. Like, if someone took a photo that was at a further distance, like an additional kilometer, they don't necessarily know and update it. They're not monitoring this. You pay them to come, like, observe your record that you break so they can put it in their book. They're not a record-keeping organization. They're a novelty book company.
Do that.
Yes, they do. There's a
Like
world
what?
record. There's a world record for most hot dogs eaten. There's a world record.
There's a
That's
world record for
groundbreaking, man.
most baseball bats broken in a minute, whatever. Like, this is like, you can call it groundbreaking, I guess, in some usages of the word, but let's be real.
No one else has done it. You do it.
So
Also, you don't know that no one else has done it because, again, they're not monitoring if someone, like, at home eats more hot dogs or whatever. They're going to where someone has paid them to observe them do the thing, which they now put up there. And some of them are available. Some records are available for challenges, and some aren't. So, like, once that guy eats the most hot dogs or whatever, maybe you can pay Guinness to send someone out to watch you eat more or whatever. but they're not just monitoring this. Like, yeah, that's not what they do.
Groundbreaking at all. Like you can get photos from very far away. If you get on top of a mountain, and you just
Which is
go
what
for a
happened.
really long distance, you'll be able to see very far. But none of that
What
is anyway groundbreaking. So all of that
And what
is perfectly explained by the globe model. Like none of that does anything to challenge the globe model.
Yeah, and by the way, in that picture, remember we saw the picture. In this picture, if the flat Earth model was correct, you would expect these mountains in the distance to appear at about to be like level in height with where they should be. Like, I don't know if they're the same height, but like if a mountain is the same height, you would expect it to be level in height with where the observer is. As compared to well, I guess it's hard to compare at that distance. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good idea, but obviously the height is pretty relevant.
What you said about the guy standing on the end of the street not really being there, I mean, it depends on how far away he is and the speed of light. So when we look up at the stars, what we're seeing is where they were billions of years ago.
Okay, I get what he's saying, but this is not helpful. Yeah, this guy's obviously just gonna block. Yeah, in a way that's correct, right? We're only ever seeing the past. The light from distant objects it has been traveling sometimes for millions of years. When we look at really distant stars, we're not seeing what they are like now. We're seeing like what they were like millions of years ago. Even the light from the sun takes, I think, 8 minutes to go from the surface to the Earth. So like we're seeing the sun as it was 8 minutes ago, even when we see it. But that's not like super relevant to what he's talking about, especially when he's talking about a guy down the street, and it just sounds ridiculous.
And so
Because remember, this guy is opposed to science in principle. So like anything that's not intuitive, he's gonna be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? You believe all this crazy shit."
anymore. Many of the stars we see in the night sky have already died and
Oh, they died. I know.
So,
I know. That's what they say. I know that story, man. It's a cool story.
Yeah, he doesn't
Uh,
believe this
Lawrence-
shit either. Yeah,
Lawrence
because he
Krauss-
can't. Yeah.
Lawrence Krauss said, Jesus didn't die for you. These stars died for you. Are the stars in your left hand are different from the stars in your right?
So I'm curious. I really want to know why what aspects of that he has a problem with, because it could be so many things. So I'm excited. But for context, Krauss is also an anti-theist, so he doesn't give much credence to religious belief. He talks about like the origins of the universe and like how things have gone. He's a science popularizer, or at the very least he was. And one of the things he talks about is like, the way elements are formed in the initial universe. They're only like hydrogen, helium, and maybe lithium or something, like very, very basic elements. But they started condensing and creating stars and getting smashed together in nuclear fusion, and you got more compound elements. And then those stars had to die for those elements to leave there. So they did, and they dispersed, and then larger stars could compound them into even denser and heavier elements, and then those stars died, and those elements dispersed, and that's how we get all of the elements that make up us, right? Like carbon, for one. You don't need the second layer of like stars, but like you needed the first stars, or stars made with those very basic atoms, to exist, burn out, and die, and disperse the carbon and other elements within for you to even exist. You are made of stardust in a way. Every atom of your being was once in a star. Possibly hydrogen might have been, but you get the point. And so that's what he's saying. Like, it's poetic. What he's saying it's that the stars had to die for you to be here. The stars died for you, and that's really cool. It's inspiring. It makes you feel a part of the universe, or at least it does me. It makes you. It feels significant in a way that often science is portrayed as making you feel insignificant. If you are just some cosmic speck, but I'm a cosmic speck that stars died, that stars died for me to be here. That's so amazing. Ashes to ashes, stardust to stardust. Yeah, like it's pretty cool, and he means that as an inspiring statement, not like. Yeah, I don't know. Like, not to, yeah. And because he has an issue with religions, we say like forget Jesus, because like Jesus is a person. It's the stars died for you. That's kind of cool, right? And it's to encourage interest in science. That's why he's saying it. Curious why Billy's mad. Probably because he's a Christian. But I wonder if there's more to it. And like, obviously, he doesn't believe that that stars die, and like, which is just like an extrapolation. This is one of those like, you can't know that a flat earther is going to not believe in stars creating elements and then dispersing them, and then that's how we get them or whatever. But some of them have to believe that because their views don't make any sense unless you believe some outright nonsense. And what collection of nonsense you believe is based on the person. Maybe not literally, haha, but poetic. Yeah, exactly. The point is how poetic and inspiring it is.
Right hand. Have you ever seen any of the stuff? Like, you've got to do both sides. That's why I'm here. You know, like I'm not here to
You
debate.
got to
I'm
do
not
both
even
sides,
gonna
but like both sides between sense and nonsense, right? You know, this is like, it's obvious when we talk about things that are. I want to talk about something even more ridiculous, but Flat Earth is pretty far down the ridiculousness path. But like something that's obviously false, you know, like, I don't know, the sun is purple, right? Like, teach both sides of the controversy. This guy would probably agree that that's nonsense. That's what's happening here. So it, like, the demand to teach both sides is unreasonable because your position is not the other side. It's the whack job down the street with a tinfoil hat on, screaming about how the end is near. That's you, dude.
convince you. I've seen some of your videos. You sit there debating with atheists on whether the word atheist is right or wrong. Like, you're getting two atheists arguing each other over a word.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, I get why this guy is gonna have a problem with this, but while I understand you have an issue with intellectualism and arguing about whether certain words are correct or what things mean and finding out what's true and improving our understanding, other people like doing that.
That
Again, I'm
actually means
I'm not sure
non-belief
how
of
this is
God.
relevant.
It's also
So
not
again,
relevant, yeah.
like,
T-Jump
we
was
can
better than
prove
me on that
How
one,
are the
noticing it.
sky relevant? How is the sky to test the curve? So let's
Testable predictions. It's all about testable predictions. Like when we have to compare the evidence of both sides, there is only one kind of evidence, and that's testable predictions. It doesn't matter if you can post hoc explain other stuff we already know. The only kind of evidence that exists for anything is testable predictions. So you have to say, if my theory is correct, I can make a prediction about something we don't know yet, do a test to confirm that, and say, oh, I was right about this. Flat earthers can't do that. You've done
Yes,
that for nothing
correct.
ever.
And he never, and like that's the thing, like so far the closest he's come is he's mentioned like taking long distance pictures as like his evidence, but he's not presenting any testable predictions. They never do. And the ones they do present don't work, or they have to do something very wrong in their experiment.
I agree with what you're saying. It's about testing stuff. So what test did Newton do?
Like calculating the rates of the planet's rotation. That's
What,
like
with
some of the
this?
tests he did.
With a pen? Did he calculate with this? Here, I'll calculate.
Yes,
I'll
yes,
calculate.
So as it
he
turns
looked
out,
at
yes,
them and he's
you
like,
can
yes,
learn
okay,
things
so I
about the
calculated
And you
world
looked
there.
at him
by
with
doing
what?
math.
How? Up to the age of 23. He didn't even live long enough, man. 23-year-olds. What did you do by 23?
You can
So now we have, if you're under 23, you cannot know anything that is true. Okay, cool.
see
Like just pay attention to how much stuff conspiracists have to dismiss. I know we've done this before, but we're seeing it in a different context now.
see the planets with your naked eye. You don't need a telescope.
And you can predict everything with your naked eye. The planets with your naked
No.
eye.
You
Yeah,
use
see,
the
like,
math to do the prediction,
Yeah,
and then you
he rejects the concept of math, and then says, well, that certain observations are impossible without them. This system is built so that you cannot ever prove anything, right? And the only thing you're left with is, well, I don't see a curve. Herp derp. Moving on.
can confirm it with the naked
But
eye.
like, look how much he has to throw out math. He has to
So
throw
I'm
out
not
science. He has to
sure
throw out
what
observations done
difficulty
by
you're
people that are
having
not
with
you.
that one. But again,
Observations that are
the
done
flat Earth
without
Yes,
with the assistance of technology. Observations that are done without the assistance of technology. Like, he's willing to throw out everything as long as he can keep his one wacko belief.
And the difficulty I have is the BS that you are relying on a guy, on ancient people for now, for your. They would have told you that you can't speak through a microphone 500 years ago.
Okay.
Our predictions suggest
Okay.
that based on our current technology, because Newton didn't even.
But obviously, there's a different. I hope I don't have to explain the difference between a statement like "you can't do this thing that we think is currently impossible," and "I have made an observation about the universe." Right? Like those, you can understand how those are different.
Consider electromagnetism or any other aspect, or
Right.
static, or anything.
I don't know what's going on with this video. It's not me. It's the
Why?
We can
It's-
confirm all of the equations today.
what's coming on.
matters
It's
now
like
that
the
we
uploaded
live, that
video.
We know we live in an electromagnetic
Yeah, but that,
universe.
again, so
Matters quite a lot.
so
Actually.
go back to the argument.
So now
The
he's just like
argument was
full
that
screech and
evidence
not
is
and
testable
non-stop
predictions.
babble mode, right?
Newton made testable predictions. He confirmed them, but if you don't want to believe that, that's fine. We can confirm them today and say, "Yep, he was right."
Oh, okay. That I was wondering because we had
Nothing
some weird stuff.
else, Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Like all of that is perfectly explained under the globe model by the way how we know physics works. So there's none of that in any way conflicts with the globe model. You just don't understand physics.
It's a spinning ball then, and it'll always be. And nothing. There's nothing
No,
that
no,
anyone can
that's-
show you.
The massive irony. This is again like every accusation is a confession. There's nothing anyone can show you that would prove otherwise. Well, no, he's looking at the evidence. There's evidence we can use to demonstrate the shape of the Earth as being a globe. You, Billy, are the one who will reject literally everything unless it confirms that the Earth is flat. Because there's stuff you can do and either you haven't done or you have done and just rejected the evidence of. That can demonstrate that the Earth is not flat.
Anyone that could show you to
There
change
is.
your mind is
There is absolutely.
What is it? What is it?
Just find
Hold on
me
one
the
sec,
firmament.
guys. One sec.
Go
Oh
to
yeah,
the
so this
argument.
is so I get where he's coming from, T-Jump, but like this is not a great because Billy hasn't like gone to bat for the firmament. This is something I talked about before when we were going over the like flat Earth cosmology. Is so the firmament. Is this the? I guess this is the best image I have. So a lot of it is based on biblical cosmology, which includes this concept of the firmament. You see this dome here? This isn't. It's not just this is not just the atmosphere. Basically, like in biblical cosmology, there's like the waters and the waters above the waters, and like the planetary bodies are in the waters above the waters. It's very weird. I'm not like super up to date on. I'm like I don't remember it super well, but as it's like yes, there's this atmosphere, but outside of here is water. And the firmament is like the film between, or no, or maybe the firmament is the water. It's basically like it's not just nothingness out here, like either this border or the actual thing in which the sun and the moon move in is the firmament, and like there's like a stuff there. And flat earthers often resort to this. Oftentimes, flat earthers believe in flat earth stuff because they're like Christian dominionists kind of thing. Like they have reasons they believe in this stuff, as I was mentioning before. And so like they often go to like biblical cosmology and like the firmament or whatever. But Billy hasn't said anything about that. He's said remarkably little about his position. So like I get it, T-Jump, because like they believe in some wacky shit and be like, here's the thing you can prove, but Billy might not believe in the firmament.
One sec.
And at the
guys,
very
I'm
least you could
so
lie about
sorry.
it.
We lost the connection. It just all of a sudden dropped.
Damn.
Yeah, I have no
So
idea.
people can't hear us right now?
No, they can't right now. I'm
Well, you
trying to
can.
figure out- I'm down as
Or maybe not on the stream, just on the
I
recording.
don't know where. That was so bad. Okay, so with that, gentlemen, I can go back and look up those old super chats. So, folks, if you sent a
Okay,
super
so I
chat,
think we're
don't
getting to the
worry,
Q&A.
I will
We'll do
pull
this for a little
those
bit.
up in
I
the
hope this
messages
was
during the
this was
Q&A.
fun for everybody. Getting to see
with
some
that,
flat earth stuff.
where
I
were
was a little honestly, I was pretty disappointed because we didn't actually see any flat earth stuff. We saw the rejection of the globe model, which flat earthers do, and it is fun for that. But I had to provide all the context of like what flat earthers will sometimes say. Billy wasn't interested whatsoever in actually talking about what he believes or proof that it's real. More so than I've seen other flat earthers. Weirdly, most of the time they're they're at least they at least make some arguments about like how this is ridiculous or like you can know it from this thing or that thing, and obviously it's all nonsense. The only thing we got was, oh, someone like we can take pictures from far away, but those cases are always with elevation or with water where light can refract on the surface. We'll do some of the Q&A, but I'm glad you thought it was interesting, Kemgal. It could have been better.
Before I interrupted you guys, thanks so much for your patience. And
Billy was saying that there was nothing that could convince me that the world was flat, something like that.
Yeah, no, I asked you, is there is there anything that could convince you that your model is
Oh, okay. We're not going to the Q&A yet.
Yes, absolutely. Just novel testable predictions. So for
Okay,
example,
all right. It's actually good that the stream cut out because that answer is much better. Yeah, novel testable predictions. Thank you.
if you believe in the firmament, like I don't know.
Okay.
what the particular model
Much
is,
better
but
approach.
I've never seen it, man.
Like
Yeah, so yeah, that's what I mean. Like he can say he doesn't believe in it. He might believe in it, by the way. Flat earthers are not known for their honesty. But yeah, demanding to see the firmament doesn't necessarily work.
that the Antarctica, the South Pole goes all the way around the world.
I have never seen. I've seen as much. Like, what can we know about that? There needs to be. I believe if
Yeah,
there's water-
now he's like, this is something they always do. I only know the things I've seen and whatever. But like, we wouldn't be able to know anything about the world if we thought like this. You couldn't know anything. So much, like literally, the technology he's using couldn't work. If we limited ourselves to the things we could observe ourselves and know personally.
if the water on this earth needs to be contained, so there needs to be some type.
And if you don't think that's true, like if you think that's exaggeration, I can demonstrate it to you actually. How do I know that I'm actually being broadcast to other people and they are seeing me right now? How do I know that? I can't be where those other people are, not at the same time that I'm here. Maybe I could get like my phone and I can but how would I know that it's not just being sent to me and no one else? I have a way of knowing. I do actually know, but not with Billy's mindset of like, how can you know anything that you haven't observed yourself personally? One of the ways I know is that when I say a thing, people in chat are responding to me based on the things I say. That's a pretty good indication, right? That means someone else is responding and at the very least seeing it. And you might say like, oh, maybe it's like, maybe it's not actually being broadcast and someone at Kick is just watching, but they're seeing it, right? It is at least evidence, but that evidence has nothing to do. I cannot observe directly the thing that I'm trying to determine. And there are so many things that work that way. It's wild. Creationists do this too, where they're like, well, if you can't see it yourself, I didn't see a thing evolve, so therefore it can't have happened. There are millions of things. There are things that happen all the time that we do not observe directly, but we accept are true because there are other ways of knowing things about the world. Or like even hearsay, like if a friend of yours says like, oh, like Billy told me this thing, you don't know if that's true. You don't, but you accept it as true because it is evidence in a sense that it happened, because your friend wouldn't be telling you unless Billy said the thing, right? At least that's the idea. So much of what we know comes from things that we don't observe. It's absolutely absurd to insist that you have to observe something directly yourself to know it's true.
Containment. Otherwise,
Like this guy probably thinks like, because we looked up the South Pole or whatever. Like this guy probably thinks the South Pole like isn't real or whatever, or like that's not, you can't actually go there. They're just making it up and lying or whatever.
the water's just going to go on forever. Have we seen massive ice walls? I've seen videos of it. I've seen them. Have you?
Oh, you've seen videos of it. You're willing to trust that? But if I show you a picture of Earth from space being a sphere, you won't a video of like it rotating, you wouldn't trust that, right? Remember what I was saying, what I've been saying repeatedly. This is the first obvious instance of it, or at the very least the clearest instance of it. He is willing to accept anything that proves his position and nothing that disproves it, irrespective of the kind, like of kind. It doesn't matter how it's presented to him or where it comes from. The point is, this video proves a thing he believes, so it's true. even though it could, like, any number of things could be, it could be going on as far as whether it's real or not. Like, maybe it's an ice wall elsewhere, or maybe it's someone did some Photoshop or whatever. Like, but he's unwilling to trust anything that proves a globe model. He was unwilling to just a video that shows the Earth from space as a globe. Like, I love this picture, and I'm sure you've seen it before. No. Where? No, there's a famous picture called, there it is, called the Big Blue, a Big Blue Marble, taken from the surface of the moon, and you can see the Earth. Oh, god damn it! It was a very famous. He would never accept this, right? Because it shows the spherical Earth. He'll never accept this, but he will accept a video that shows the ice wall surrounding the edge of the Earth, because it supports him. It's motivated reasoning.
No, well, you should do some research on it, man. Go and look at it.
Do some research. Yeah, there's a thing that exists, and it's probably bullshit, but you should do some research. The do your own research types don't ever mean do your own research. They mean go find the things that prove what I'm saying, that argue what I'm saying, so I can appear like there's evidence for my position that I'm not presenting, but don't go looking at the actual evidence that proves me wrong.
Massive walls of ice. Admiral Richard Byrd climbed these walls of ice during Operation High Jump. They took thousands of men down there.
It's probably
thousands
bullshit.
of 1,300.
This is another
ships.
instance where, like, you could not possibly prepare for this. Like, how deep in the hole would you have to be to know about whatever nonsense he's talking about? Operation High Jump. All right, I'm curious a little bit. We're not going to spend too much time on this. Operation High Jump was officially told. Okay. Okay. Is officially titled the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program. The United States operation to establish an Antarctic research base in Little America 4. The operation was organized. Okay. Okay. Their objectives were training, consolidation, determining feasibility of. Okay. Nothing to do with. Nothing to do. Okay. Maybe if I went super deep into it, we could find. We could find what the fuck he's talking about like, climbing the ice wall or whatever. But it sounds like that's not what they were doing. This is probably a thing where, like, they found an operation in Antarctica. They go, well, because the Earth is flat, they must be there to, like, research the ice wall, because look how many people they sent there, and they must be lying to us, because obviously they've been lying to us about the shape of the Earth for literal thousands of years. And so, because we're assuming all these things, it makes, like, it's true if you assume all of the things that you're trying to prove are true.
13 playing. I don't know. Look at the numbers, mate. I've actually written about it in my book. I should know them. Off
Just
the top of my
conspiracy.
head.
Like, it's a
But
thing they could
don't,
point
because
to.
I've seen they had to-
Like, it's the kernel of truth. They always do this. They find a thing that's true, in that there was an operation in Antarctica that the United States Navy did. That's the thing that's true. What he's saying that's from that is also they were there to investigate the ice wall and to climb it and to hide from us the shape of the Earth and yada yada. But none of that is demonstrable, and it's a little bit of a Mott and Bailey, right? He can point back to, like, no, this is a real operation. Yeah, the operation happened. That's not what they were doing.
to climb, they call
But
it
he can, like,
Operation High Jump.
now because we have a story that he's trying to contest, now he doesn't have to prove his position anymore. Once we get to that point, where if we were actually going to argue about this, he doesn't have to prove his position anymore. Instead, he just has to poke holes in the official narrative, and that's what he would do, right? But he's never going to try to prove that that's actually what happened,
No,
because he couldn't,
they
because
had to
obviously that's
get
not what was
from their
happening.
boats up to this ice wall, and then go beyond. And he said there was more land. More
Ice-
land to be found.
Ice floats on the top of the water, so there can't
course.
be an ice wall that contains the water because the water would go underneath it. So that's like the South
It'd
Pole
have
is
to, wouldn't it?
just
Yeah,
ice.
what?
The North
It'd
Pole
have
is
to.
land, I think. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't remember.
You're right. I agree that if there was ice, it would go all the way to the bottom. You know, we know ice floats, so there'd have to be a point where you would be able to go under this ice wall. And
So he's saying, like, notice this is a problem with the flat Earth model. In case it wasn't clear, what T-Jump is saying is that this ice wall that flat Earthers say exists shouldn't be possible. In that ice would float. Now, I mean, sufficiently enough ice, maybe it would go to the bottom. But like, if there is this ice wall, the expectation is that it would float and that all the water would flow out. Because remember, the purpose of saying there's that ice wall is to explain away why all the water of the oceans doesn't flow off the Earth, because they think gravity is some special property of the direction down, and things just flow in that direction. So you would expect the water to flow out, right? These are extrapolating problems. You say, okay, if the Earth is flat, why doesn't all the water just flow off? Well, there's an ice wall. Okay, but if there's an ice wall, shouldn't that float on the water and the water could flow underneath? And he's saying, yeah, so maybe we could do that as an experiment, but not understanding, no, that's a problem with your model. It's proof that what you're saying can't be true. Because otherwise, we would observe different things.
Submarine, you could keep going and pop up into the one of the other little ponds. We don't know. We don't go there. I can't do that, Tom. I don't know about the ice wall. I can't go there. I'm just a man in Melbourne. How am I going to go to the ice wall?
So now we're retreating back to, like, I can't know things that I don't observe personally, which is nonsense. But the point is, you don't have to go there to realize that there's a problem. If the world were like this, you wouldn't have an ocean to go walk down to.
Anybody can buy a ticket to the South
You
Pole.
haven't even gone out and tested the curve of the Earth in your own land, let alone test.
Well, you don't know that. You just
find
accused him of
the
not
ice wall
living
or the
sufficiently
firmament.
close to water.
Well, I mean, every test I do is going to be conformed to exactly what the geocentric model stuff is going to show. Just like every test you do conforms exactly to what the geocentric model is
That's
going
what
to
you
show.
should do. You should be going and testing that formula, actually.
So now it's not that the tests don't. Again, it's just this is kind of like a guy's ad hominem. It's that you're lying to us. You don't actually know what you're talking about.
Testing that formula. Testing whether water is level over vast distances.
Well, we have. That's already been
have.
demonstrated. So
When?
every observation and every test on the face of the Earth has always 100% conformed to exactly what the geocentric map.
Now, of course, he's going to say that we don't. You don't know that. You were just lied to. Yada yada,
That's
etc.
what
But
I'm
it's
claiming.
nonsense.
That's my side, man. I'm
No,
geocentric. You're heliocentric.
Heliocentric, yeah. So the
Yeah.
globe-
Oh, so he's also a geocentrist. Yep, that's usually what goes.
Yeah, I still
But
get-
now, once you're a geocentrist, now you have huge problems. This is one I thought of earlier, but stopped myself because I realized it was a geocentrism issue. But like constellations move throughout the night sky. We know that it's because the Earth rotates, and so you see different parts of the sky as your location on the Earth spins. Oh, I actually have a globe here. I don't know why I'm not using it. This is perfect. But like as we rotate, a different part of the sky is visible to you, right? So that's why we see different constellations. But in a geocentric model, where the Earth is flat and stationary and does not move, and like everything rotates around us, now you have to say that those stars that are millions of miles away are moving in the night sky fast enough that they're moving past us and rotating around the Earth every night, which would be speeds that are relativistic. Like they would have to be going either faster than the speed of light or close to it, and that would be a problem. And this is why I say they throw out relativity. Now, sometimes they say those stars are like actually not that far away, but also a lot of the evidence they try to use to disprove the heliocentric model or the globe model is by using those measurements of how far these stars are. Do they think those are holograms too? So there are different schools of thought. Some think they are much, much closer and just really small. Some think, depending on like how like into biblical cosmology they get, like I think some of them are saying like those are holes in the firmament, and that's where the light's getting through, and it's just like the firmament rotating. People get really weird about it. It doesn't make any sense. You know, it's not. You know, we could try to figure out how they try to explain it away, but none of it's going to make sense. What's the point?
we got the
You can
first-
become a geocentric. You're going to become a geocentric eventually.
No.
Because that's what I did as well. It's geocentric, and that's watch a documentary called The Principle.
Oh, I knew it. As soon as he said watch a documentary, I'm like, oh, is it coming? Is it The Principle? The Principle is buck wild, but as a note, it is, yes, a geocentrism documentary, despite the fact that the makers claim it's not. They're like, oh, we're just asking questions. And it's a geocentrism documentary that Lawrence Krauss is in. So is Michio Kaku. There's some other very famous physicists that are in it, and is narrated by blanking on her name. Narrated by god damn it. What's the name? Kate Mulgrew. It is narrated by Kate Mulgrew. And you just go, how the hell did this geocentrism documentary get all these people into it? And the answer is they were not upfront about what they were talking about. They acted like they weren't. There's another great folding ideas video about the principle. It's kind of like a follow-up to Searching for a Flat Earth, where he talks about this. But yeah, of course this guy likes the principle. There are a huge number of problems with it, including the creator of it interviewing himself in his own documentary to kind of launder his views as though they're just interviewing an expert. And like and he has like a fake degree from a diploma mill, and so he interviews himself, then puts like Lawrence Krauss there saying something that's not actually in agreement, and then putting some other guy who's another crank with another fake degree on the other side of it, so it looks like they're all in agreement with each other, even though Lawrence Krauss is absolutely not a geocentrist. And he had he even wrote an article, was it Slate? Maybe it was the Atlantic, saying he had no idea how he ended up in that geocentrism documentary.
Sorry
Of
to
course,
interrupt
this guy
you, man.
likes it.
Watch a documentary called The Principle, and you'll
Oh.
love it, man.
Okay.
Even the best
Just to be
scientists.
sure.
Yep.
I hate to interrupt you, Billy. Just to be
And
sure.
yeah, so that's what we say. Like even the best scientists in the world are in agreement because their agreement was implied by the documentary, even though they are not in agreement. It was a lot of there's a lot of. It's not that they were. It wasn't like minuscule sound bites taken out of context so much as like. If asked, what if you're wrong about this thing, Michio Kaku might say, oh, I might think, oh, I'd have to find another job or whatever. And he's saying that kind of as a joke, and they put up images to make it seem like, oh, he's only not saying it's false because he'll be having to go to the unemployment office or whatever else, right? Like it's a lot of implied conclusions in what the scientists are saying that they don't actually mean.
Tom gets a response there. I appreciate your passion, though. We like that. And so, Tom, just to be sure you got a chance to respond there.
I get fired up.
Yeah. So again, if you want to provide evidence for the geocentric model or the flat Earth, you can't just look at stuff we've already seen and already explained and try to explain it in a different way. You have to do something new.
Yeah, and this is a good point from T-Jump. This is something that that creationists also do, but flat earthers do all the time, where their evidence is, I see a phenomenon, I know that already that the Earth is flat, so how can I explain it away with the assumption of a flat Earth? But that's not evidence, right? You have to make a novel testable claim, a prediction that can be verified, and they can't do that.
So every observation we can make just by looking at the ocean or looking at taking photos from long distances or infrared testing or whatever, all of that's been done. We already know all of the answers you're going to get from that. You could just ask the scientists and ask them what you're going to get, and they're going to tell you, and they're going to be right 100% of the time. They already know all of this. So just saying you can explain it using a different analysis and say that theirs is wrong for some reason, which it's not, doesn't do anything to help your case.
And he doesn't have a reason why it's wrong other than look at with your eyes, can't you see it's flat? But we went over this, right? Like like we went over this, right, with the tennis ball here. Tennis balls are flat, right? Like, but that's at the end of the day, the flat horizon is the only argument flat earthers really have. They just pretend like they have other stuff, or like they do experiments badly.
You need something new. Like, if we could, you asked if there was anything that could convince me of the geocentric model or the flat Earth model. if you buy a plane ticket to the South Pole, which anyone can do, like any human being can buy a plane ticket to there just like they can. To
And they
anywhere
never
else in
do
the
it.
world, and you find this ice wall, that would be great evidence. Find me the edge of the world, essentially. That's
Yep.
great evidence. But
And he's
no
laughing
one
because
has
he
ever
knows
done it.
it's
I've never
like
seen a flat earther
he's
go to
acting
the
like it's
South Pole.
ridiculous, but
Anybody
it's
can.
obviously like it would obviously be a way of proving his position, but he's never gonna do it, right?
But
You live in
no
Melbourne; it's
one's
not
ever
even that
done it.
far.
Like, I've never seen a flat earther go to the South Pole. Anybody can do this. Like anybody can just buy a ticket to the South Pole.
He's laughing probably because he imagines some conspiracy. He's probably like, "Oh, you actually think you can really go there? You buy the bullshit?" Because remember, when you believe that the Earth is flat, you have to believe that that you're prevented from going to the South Pole because otherwise you could do that and prove right. Like it's the conspiracy that must exist. Otherwise, I could prove that I'm right, which they're trying to keep me from.
Be easy and just rent a truck and just drive wherever you want. No one's going to stop you. But they don't. Like no one ever goes. That would be the greatest evidence for the flat Earth. Just find the firmament. Just find a giant invisible wall going up into space that no one can get past. Poof! You've got this amazing evidence for the flat Earth. But no one's done that. No flat earthers have ever gone to the South Pole because it's just another continent of ice, just like every other one. There's nothing special about it. There's no blockade holding the water in. It just holds itself to the surface of the Earth because it's a globe, just like all the other.
Another thing you can do, you also don't have to go to the South Pole. You could, on a boat, circle Antarctica. Like, think about that. It should be impossible on a flat Earth. Or at the very least, not impossible, but your route would be very different. So on a flat Earth, if you were to circle Antarctica, this is not as good a picture as I wanted. You would have to be constantly directing your angle away from the continent, right? But on a globe Earth, you'd be constantly changing your angle towards the continent. Could easily do that, but they don't, right? Like they're not going to.
That we see hold gas to their surface. So yes, there are definitely things that.
Oh, and while you're doing it, you could also measure the distance you travel, because the distance around Antarctica on the globe model has to be enormous, right? But the actual distance around it is not that large. You could do that too.
The world is flat. Go find the firmament. That would be great evidence.
And he's laughing like it's ridiculous that you could find
far,
evidence.
You want me to go to the ice wall and find the firmament. Let me explain the ice wall, which you said is all ice. Sorry, the Antarctica, which is a continent of all ice. It's not. Google it. There's land there.
Yeah, there's
You'll see
land.
mountain peaks when they melt. There's actually mountains. There's land in Antarctica.
Yeah,
It's
that
not
has
all
nothing to
ice,
do with anything.
like we were led to believe. Our model.
Well, no,
is-
we're not led to. No, what? As far as people can correct me if they were taught differently, but as I was taught, the North Pole doesn't have any land; it's all ice. But the South Pole, Antarctica, is a continent. It is the seventh continent. There is land there. Has anyone been taught differently? That's what I was taught. I don't know what he's talking about. Like led to believe that it's all ice. I thought T-Jump was just like being hyperbolic, but sure.
Our model, the things you know, I got taught the same stuff, mate. I got taught the same stuff at school.
And yet you
As
didn't learn.
I know what you're saying about this. It's the Antarctica is supposed to be at the bottom of the wall.
Billy's back. Thanks so much, Billy. So
What happened
sorry.
there? Lost the
Billy.
connection.
It was my fault, Billy. I'm so sorry about that.
NASA was
Promise
trying to
that
take you down
I
because you
blame
know
your
too
mom,
much and you're
but
giving
it
away
won't
the
happen
truth.
again.
Yeah, cool. I think
He doesn't seem
Brad,
like
I'll
that kind of
come off-
conspiracist, but there are some like that, and it's very funny to me.
We're talking about Antarctica and and the firmament, and that's just like way beyond what anyone can prove. Can you prove the Van Allen radiation belts, Tom? I
What?
bet you can't. Can you prove what's at the core of this spinning ball? You can't. No one's even.
No. Well, okay. Here's the thing. But you could do what T-Jump was suggesting. You could do that. You just don't. There's a difference between not being able to do a thing and not doing a thing. That said, apparently, well, yeah, we can prove what's inside, but not by anything he would accept, right? Remember, for Billy, you have to observe something directly. He doesn't actually believe that, but he claims to believe that when it comes to science because it lets him believe the things that are unprovable.
How?
Testable predictions. You can make novel testable predictions.
How?
Like
You can make
predict
novel
that
testable predictions.
if it's made of whatever composition you want, then you can make a prediction about what the field that it creates is going to be like, and you can make a prediction that if there's a different planet with a different composition, it'll make a different field, and that'll have a different effect on the kinds of radiation it'll allow through. So we can definitely show those things. Yes.
But we've only drilled 8 miles down into the Earth.
We don't need to actually.
You don't actually have to
don't need
drill,
direct
and actually, it would be.
The
I imagine it would be rather
Weather Channel
catastrophic
makes
if we drilled
certain
through the
predictions
crust.
all the time. They're always wrong, man.
Yes,
They're
that's why
wrong.
we don't trust them. If they're
That's
right,
why. Yeah,
then
that's
we
why we
trust
don't
them.
trust. And these are the same people that may have, scientists make other
no,
predictions.
no.
No.
The weather people, the meteorologists, are not the same as the.
Earth. You can't go to the core of the Earth, and
You
I
don't
can't.
need to.
To the edge
Yeah,
of the Earth.
so
Well, I need
yeah,
to either.
T-Jump,
I
like
need
it's
to go
not.
to the edge
This
of
is
the
the
Earth,
problem.
like
He's
you
gonna
said,
pretend
the
like
edge of the Earth.
observation is
I don't think you've
direct
researched
observation is
something
something.
enough. For you to say edge of the Earth, you're assuming that what is it? The Earth is a flat Earth is a disc flying through space, and a cat's going to push things off the edge. Is that what you're assuming?
Well, you haven't told us what you believe, so you can make it sound ridiculous, but obviously you haven't told us anything about what you think the Earth is actually like. You haven't demonstrated anything about your position, even what your position is. So you might think it sounds ridiculous, but you were already talking about the ice wall. You think that if the Earth is flat, there must be an edge, unless you think it's infinite, which, whoo boy, there are problems with that.
You go first.
I don't think that. I think that the Earth is an infinite plane.
He does think it's infinite. I hope I don't have to explain to anyone how absurd that is. But like, if it were infinite, oh god, like this is the first I've heard this. What would be like a really obvious, like, okay, then climb to the other side of the Earth wall, of the ice wall, right? You think it's there, but also, are there like what the fuck? What would you think is out there? Jesus, yeah, that's wild.
I don't know what it is actually. I don't know what it is, but what I do know is that we don't live on a spinning ball.
No, you don't
And
know
how
that.
would you prove that we do yourself? How would you go out and prove that we live on a spinning ball?
Well, he's
Novel testable predictions. I'd use
well,
the math.
okay. This is where T-Jump, you really needed an example. This is where you should have had one in the outset. Like you can just keep going back to here's the experiment I suggested, and like you can say you did. It doesn't really matter if you did or not. He's not going to believe you.
Use and show that it works.
They use, not they. Now, how would you start from
Yeah,
day
this is where you
one
needed
to
something
prove you live on a
concrete.
spinning ball?
But like as we were talking here, I actually really like the experiment I suggested of literally just take a boat and circle Antarctica. Doing two things. One, monitoring the direction that you have to navigate, and two, measuring how far it is that you go. It should at the very least disprove the flat Earth. If you wanted to pull up the globe Earth, there's a lot of ways, but we've talked about some of them, but he also rejects some of them, even though he could just do them, like the stick and shadow.
Woke up, this debate was not, it was never even discussed where we live, and you said no one told
Oh,
you.
we also talked about like just measuring a sufficiently large triangle. It doesn't matter where you live on the planet. I don't know how big it has to be, but remember we talked about like if you make a sufficiently large triangle on a globe Earth, some of the interior angles will be greater than 180 degrees.
You had to figure out where you live. What test would you do? You'd wake up and go, it feels stationary. I'm not moving.
Yeah, well, that would be a terrible methodology. If I did that, I would be an idiot. So anyone who does that is dumb. So because we know there's.
It's not good for a debate, but I feel you, T-Jump.
Tribe in the middle of Indonesia. Yes, we should probably not do anything they're doing because that's not going to get us anywhere. What we should do is look at the modern technology of the past 2,000 years of how we've gone from that level of technology to skyscrapers and planes and telephones and cell phones and cameras and stuff, and use that methodology because that methodology works.
They're
So-
different. That's different. You know, when you're talking about physical, materialistic things that you can prove.
Also, like, just the field of cartography would not work. Or would not give us the maps that we presently have if the Earth was flat. We would have very different maps that look like this. Like, one of the things you note is how much farther apart things are. The distance between, like, look, the distance between the south of South America and the east coast of Australia. Look how absolutely enormous that distance is as compared with how it is on a globe. We could measure that. Like, literally, we can measure that. And our graphs, or sorry, our maps would look different if the distances were like this. But this is where he has to resort to the conspiracy of, like, no, it's because they're trying to hide it from you. Who? Everyone. Why? I don't know. Like, but like like the number of people who have to be in on it is now verging on like most people, but nobody knows why, and like it's for no discernible benefit to anybody.
We know someone built that
Like the
building.
plane, like the globe.
But that's different
That's
to
physical.
theoretical.
And like at that point, who are
science.
they even
That's
hiding it
different to
from?
Theoretical science, isn't it?
Well, nothing in
Yeah.
physics isn't theoretical science unless it's theoretical physics. So no, the globe isn't theoretical. It's proven. It's physics.
It's theoretical.
Nope.
You went from the very start. That one of the first things you said is photos from Earth from space. Photos of Earth from space. They're questionable. You know that.
No.
No flat earther
That's
would be a
not
flat
how
earther if they were
physics
real
is.
photos.
No. Every flat earther is a flat earther despite them being real photos. But no flat earther is a flat earther without having to make up a reason why they should dismiss them. That's not the same thing. Yeah, every single flat earther has problems with it because it proves them wrong, not because it's not true.
Physics isn't based off photos. That's just something
Physics.
that's verified.
You started the discussion of
Yes,
it
as
around
evidence that
said
we can
we
use, but
about
now he's
23
not. But he
times.
but
Yeah.
he
You
wasn't
said
saying that
China,
was
Russia,
physics.
Satellites can't be.
He's
all
like
predictions
willfully
are based on
misunderstanding
quantum mechanics.
too.
Yep.
On satellites can't be done. Have you seen the balloon satellites?
No, there's no balloon
No.
satellites.
No. So you know, I should write down the amount of no's you said on that you haven't researched.
Yeah, again, right? What's the argument he's making? It's not. My point is correct. It's you are uninformed and are either lying or don't know what you're talking about. It's an ad hominem. Ad hominem. He's not actually making any arguments.
Because I don't need to. Again,
don't need to.
the only thing I need is testable predictions. So I can say,
Yeah,
here's
I know.
the
That's
math.
all I need. Me too, because I got
But
to
you
the
don't
point
have
where
testable
after-
predictions. You don't
after
make
sifting through
predictions.
all
Flat
the
earthers don't make
bullshit,
predictions.
excuse me, after sifting through all the bullshit of the site of the model that we were taught, and I'm Greek, right? I loved the heliocentric model. I could tell it inside out. And did you know when Newton made his predictions, he didn't realize that the sun was also orbiting.
Wait,
through the,
like, hold on. If he thinks the Earth is an infinite plane, then you have extra questions of how the fuck do lunar eclipses happen? Like, at least with the people who think it's a flat disk, you can be like, well, the moon goes behind the Earth. Or sorry, well, no, that still doesn't work. Yeah, I actually don't know how they explain it either. But, yeah, I don't know. It's fucking
universe
nonsense.
at 500,000 miles an hour. Plus
Okay.
all these other, they didn't know that, man.
They didn't
They
need it.
thought it was they thought that the sun was in the center. They called it heliocentric.
And
we
you
went
still
around
think
the
that.
sun. So now we know it's doing this.
And so this
all these other
infinite
Why-
plane
why are you
is...
saying
Oh,
this?
no, you
Why
think
do
that...
you think this is relevant? Like,
Because,
yes.
because you're going based on predictions.
I'm
and
sorry,
these
I'm
guys
still
were
blown
wrong.
away
They
by the
knew
infinite
something
plane
would
They
claim.
were not wrong. They were like, why do you think this made them wrong? Like, they only made predictions about the solar system, and their predictions about the solar system were right. Their predictions
Well-
about the solar system in relation to the galaxy, well, they didn't make any in that sense at all.
They
only made,
reverse engineered that off the
Reverse
Ptolemy
engineered
system,
what?
didn't they? And if you go
Reverse-
back in time,
There's a part of me that wants to just rebuff anything this guy says about history. Be like, how do you know? You didn't observe it. No, that's not true. You didn't observe it. That's not true. We can't know anything about anything, actually.
engineered what?
the heliocentric model was reverse engineered. They just looked at what was that and they reversed the numbers.
Oh, and yeah, one of the problems with the heliocentric model, with the geocentric model, is one that has come up before, which is epicycles. basically, when trying to understand the orbit of other celestial bodies, they were, you could track them through the night sky, and like they do these like little loops that don't really make sense. If you assume that everything is rotating around the Earth, you would think it would be, just a solid orbit, but they were doing these like weird loops. And so the solution to that was this thing called epicycles, which is that it's not that it's circling the Earth like this, it's circling the Earth, but it's kind of like how the moon is circling the Earth, which is circling the sun, right? It's on an orbit around nothing on its orbit. And in order to make that work, they had to go like 7 or 8 epicycles deep in some cases. Of like, it needs to be on like 8 like mini orbits in the actual orbit. I can't even like do it right. Or maybe alternatively, the Earth isn't the center of the universe. And suddenly when they plugged that in, everything made sense again. This is what T-Jump is talking about with novel testable predictions. We would expect things to work like this. Hey, look, we can go observe that they work like that.
Do it. Fred Hoyle said the same. You got to do your research on the topic, Tom, with an open mind.
What do you think reverse engineered means?
It means you could either say that we're spinning right now, and that's what's creating the sun to appear to be moving over the sky, or you could say that I am stationary and the sun is moving. You could do the math on both models. You could either say the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles an hour, or you could say the sun is moving across the sky 1,000 miles an hour.
Well, the latter wouldn't be accurate. Even if like you take into consideration that motion is relative, you could assume that the Earth is stationary and everything is moving. It's certainly not circling the Earth. Like, I guess in a way you could like assume that, but like, yeah, I don't know. Like the model would be very different. It's like everything else is circling the sun, but the sun is circling the Earth. I guess like you could, I guess reorient your view of everything. Sure, but it still wouldn't be a geocentric model so much as like you're changing the point of focus. You're, instead of looking at the thing that is being orbited, you're looking at one of the orbiting things and declaring that as the point of reference, which is kind of how our existence is. But we say the Earth orbits the sun and that's the thing in motion, knowing that like everything is just in motion relative to others, and like we can't know if anything is stationary. We only know about relative motion.
And you could do the math on both models. You
No.
can.
But like
So
it still would be false that everything orbits the Earth, because the other planets would still be orbiting the sun in that case. It would just be like you're arguing that the sun is orbiting the Earth. But also the Earth would be orbiting the sun still in that case. I don't know. It's really weird.
I know.
That was not how the heliocentric model was made. Funny enough, no, heliocentric model was made based off of actual testable predictions that we could see in the universe that better explained
Testable
reality.
predictions. Testable
Yes.
is a very testing. What's that? Testing. How do they test it?
And now
Newton
he's getting
didn't-
patronizing.
Newton didn't conduct any
Again.
tests.
It's
man.
really simple. It's really
Neither did
simple.
Copernicus. No tests
Yes, they
whatsoever.
did. Yes, they did.
What
They
test?
didn't-
You looked at the sky. That's an observation. Not a
So
test.
notice he's not really giving the opportunity to respond, because he wants to just assert this as true, because if it were false, everything, like, he doesn't want the argument. He wants to come off as correct.
No, a test is you look at the sky, then you do the math and make a prediction about when you look at the sky in the
Cool.
future, what are you going to see? And if
That
you,
means
then if
That's-
you
that's a
wait in
test, by the
future
way.
And then you see that, that's a confirmed prediction.
Oh, great answer from T-Jump, by the way.
done, dusted,
Wait, what do you say?
confirmed, done,
Right.
dusted. On the
And now he's changing tactic. Now that T-Jump has provided such a good answer, that is, by the way, a phenomenal answer to that question. It's succinct. He still didn't need like a specific example, but it's clear what he's talking about in a way that's like not really refutable. And Billy now is like, oh, the certainty, this like, oh, you're not open to other ideas or whatever.
assumed rate. You've got to go back in time to how these guys came up with these numbers.
It doesn't matter how you came up with them. How you came
Yeah,
up with them
now
is
he's just
irrelevant.
gonna
You
like
just roll the dice.
delegitimize. Now he's trying to delegitimize something else. Like he's been thoroughly rebuked here, so he's gonna delegitimize something else. It's just about shifting ground and trying to find a thing that your opponent cannot possibly doesn't have the tools to hand to demonstrate your ridiculousness. This is what I meant about T-Jump. It would be impossible for him to know enough for Billy to not do what he's doing about, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Because he could know about all these other things, but he's going to keep poking and looking for a thing you might not know about, like the fucking Operation High Jump. Like, why the fuck would you know about that? Why would that necessarily come up? Oh, but you don't know about it? You clearly don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't matter. You couldn't possibly know enough.
8-ball and say,
You can't
I'm
do
going to make
that,
it.
Tom.
Yes, you can.
I'm
Yes, you
sorry,
can.
man.
This is
I
just,
can't.
this is basic how science works. You
If you
make a
travel to
hypothesis.
New York, you can't just make a prediction when you're going to New York. You'll never get there. You'll just die halfway, man.
What?
You
I have
gotta
no
make
idea.
some
I have no
theories.
idea what you're saying. So
Well,
how
literally
predictions
what?
work is that you make up a methodology. Doesn't matter what it is. You could say magic pixie leprechauns told you in your sleep. That's perfectly fine. And if you use magic pixie leprechauns told me that in year 2020 there's going to be an asteroid that comes by the Earth and we confirm that, that's a confirmed prediction. That's evidence of magic pixie leprechauns. How you came to that methodology doesn't matter.
Going into Q&A
It is
in just a
justified,
few
doesn't
minutes.
matter.
That's a
All that
classic.
matters is the testable prediction confirmed? That's evidence. That's how evidence works.
Confirmed, and how would you, to what level?
Now he's trying to find another
confirmed
method
and
of
that's it, done,
delegitimization.
dusted, yeah. So even if people come and question
And
it,
then
you
absurd
can't
about the
question-
certainty. Yeah, there it is, right? He like, oh, it's orthodoxy now. You can't question it. It's the cabal. Like it doesn't matter if T-Jump provides a good argument, which he did, because Billy will find some other thing. He'll change topic. He's literally changing the subject of discussion, to being about what predictable means, and like what is a testable novel prediction. Now he's like, oh, but you have an answer. So now when I ask, it's you have to silence and you can't allow dissent, and it's the conspiracy. Completely different topic, completely off a different subject. But it's just shift ground to a position where it looks like to the lizard brain part of us that he's dominant.
It's confirmed. You confirmed
Right.
it. I'm done.
Right. So
Settled.
if it's confirmed, then what you need to do to overthrow
And you can-
that is
you
you can
can-
make a better prediction.
Yeah.
You have to go into
We are.
the future.
We
No,
are,
you're
man.
not. But also, like, you would have to. You could also repeat this type of experiment, do additional predictions based on the methodology, and if you find that they don't work, then that could be an issue. So no, it's not just done. Science is never done. But at a certain point, how many times does a thing have to happen before you realize it's true, right? Like, how many do you not believe that the sun will rise in the east because like, well, what, now it's confirmed and you can't question it anymore? No, you believe it because after it happens enough, you just go, yeah, I guess it does work.
That's what we're doing. That's
I guess
what
that
we're
model
trying to
works.
advance
Never
this
made any.
topic.
Thank you, T-Jump. Way too late, but thank you. Thank you for finally saying you haven't made literally any.
Sorry?
The flat earthers have never made any. Like where are these?
We're
predictions?
Oh, and you certainly have not said any in this debate.
Predicting we predict the water is level over vast distances.
Okay,
that's-
we've proven that false.
We predict that perspective plays a major importance to how we view things in our universe, in our
What does that even mean?
in the sky, in our life.
Wait, what? So
What is that
Perspective,
prediction?
So
Our
That
perspective
is not
where-
actually a statement with
wait,
any
so
meaning.
what you just said is perspective, which is how we view things. So how we view things is really important to how we view things in the universe. Is that what you just said?
definitely how we view things looking down the street, or even when we see a boat disappearing over the horizon.
I agree.
That's not a
Have you
prediction,
looked
by
at
the way.
Have you
That's not
looked into
even.
the Black Swan. Have you seen all that stuff? The
Black
geometric
Swan
horizon
fallacy?
to the apparent horizon. Have you seen the
Uh,
problem? Have you seen the problem that's occurring?
Have you seen this very esoteric thing that even most flat earthers don't talk about? When you say no, I'll say, "Oh, you clearly don't know what you're talking about." Then
There
I
is no
know.
problem. So
There is no
problems-
problem.
There is no problem.
So the Earth curvature math and the geometric horizon that we've been told is, according to our height at sea level, it works fine. You're saying,
Yes, everything in the geocentric model
and
works
you've got to
fine.
listen to some of the globe earthers are actually saying it's wrong. The globe
100%. there's like no chance that what they're saying is there's a problem with the globe model. Absolutely the case that he's misunderstanding what's going on in these scientific discussions. There's just no way we've already seen this guy just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh, birthers are saying it's wrong, Tom. They're
Then
calling it an apparent horizon now. They're
Okay.
saying there is no geometric horizon, it's apparent.
Okay.
And it can change depending on the conditions of the day. That means it's not geometric. That means it's not
I do not believe literally anything he's saying here.
physical. That's a real
No?
problem.
Like,
There's probably a nugget of truth of there is a problem and they have talked about the apparent horizon in regards to something else. That's probably the thing that's true. And he's extrapolating of even the globe earthers are seeing that they're wrong about their model, but they're still saying it for some reason, right? It's this he's willing to accept that they're being honest about a thing that proves him right, but they will be dishonest about claims that he thinks are wrong, right? No, they know there's a problem with it, and we know that because they said there's a problem with it. But when they say there's not a problem with the globe model, oh well, they're just lying, right? It's about whether it proves his position, not about the truth.
So this is pretty easy. Like when you have a gas and the gas is heated, then it expands and it'll cause less refraction. And if it's cooled, it'll compress and it'll cause more refraction, which is determined by the time of day, because the time of day means that the sun is putting light on those gases, causing them to heat up or cool down. So the apparent horizon is caused by the time of day, by physics, all just physics we already know about of the way at which the molecules heat up or cool down. So yes, the globe model is correct on that one. We've already explained that.
Did Aristotle know this when he made his predictions?
No, but he didn't make any predictions about this.
Of viewing a boat going
Notice we're changing the subject again. Notice we changed the subject. Now he's talking about Aristotle. I thought we were talking about modern scientific findings. But we're changing the subject, right? We're just shifting position to look dominant.
horizon with his bare naked eye?
No, he
Really?
didn't. And
He didn't. They didn't even know about refraction of light, did they?
Right.
What
he
about
didn't need to.
Radisthenes?
Just
Did
change it.
Radisthenes
Just
know about these
changes
very
and to appear look how arrogant he's coming off, because he's trying to come off as smug and smarter than you, and I know, and how ridiculous your position is, but what all he's doing is changing subjects repeatedly
in the atmosphere?
No,
Didn't know
he
about
didn't need to.
altitude?
and
Sorry?
running his
He
mouth.
didn't need to.
He's
None
just
of that
babbling.
was-
Oh, and look at that's really that bugs me. That really pisses me off. That smugness. Oh, what's that? He's such a piece of shit. Holy fuck.
part of his
But
prediction.
now I need to, when I'm viewing things further, you're saying atmospheric conditions and the gases can create distortion on the things we're seeing. I get what
Right,
you're
I'm
saying.
not
All
saying
right.
you need to know that. I'm
We've-
saying that the globe model has already explained all of that.
We've got
we
a
already know all of this. You trying to explain it in a
Falsely
different way
explained
doesn't do
we've
anything.
got a
False
Just under his
explained.
breath. Falls explains it. I can't explain why. I can't say why it's wrong. I'm just going to say it's false.
trying to remember. I think that we started. I think with.
And remember,
Billy.
did not
So let's
say
up with
even
there. Thomas
did not
had-
provide even one thing that might be proof of a flat Earth. Didn't even try.
had the last word technically. So thanks so much, folks. It's a wild one. It's always hard to stop. I
It
don't know.
is.
It's because there's always got to be somebody with the last word. So thanks for your patience on that. And we're going to jump into the questions, folks. Appreciate all of your questions and especially your patience with us tonight. If you're hanging with us, you are hanging with us. You're going to see this debate. You're the only persons who are seeing it live and who will see it in the next week, because it's going to take me a week to edit this one and put it back.
I'm thinking now, what would I do? What would I want to do, having heard Billy's opening and that he didn't provide any evidence for his position or any arguments? What I think I'd like in the ideal is to have my opening. This is why a written out opening is only somewhat useful, especially if you're speaking second. Instead of going to your prepared opening, or maybe in addition to a prepared opening, say I'd like to note that Billy didn't say even a single thing that supposedly proves a flat Earth. He didn't even make an effort, so I will now argue against it. I have finished arguing against it. If he provides any evidence from here on out, it will be new, and it makes you wonder why he didn't put it in his opening and instead waits for the back and forth where I will be less able to respond to it in full, and he will be less able to even present it. And I think that would be
A
relevant
single
to
debate
point out.
compacted with these three pieces. But thanks so much, Steven Steen, for your super chat, you sicko. He says,
Okay, now we're just going to do Q&A. I think we've gone over before why I don't find Q&A particularly helpful. Well, that was fun. Super wacky. Billy believes some wilder stuff than some of the flat earthers I've seen, but also doesn't feel like talking about what he believes or why. I had a lot of fun with it. Thanks, Downtown, for the follow. I appreciate it. We're on our way. We got that count there. If we get partnered, we'll do some bad things to some tea, and it will be a travesty. Orwell will spin in his grave, which, to some people is reward enough. That said, I don't really have anything else for you today. There are some articles that I had pulled up before. Maybe we'll do those another day. I think sometime this week I'll probably have some Magic content. I think that'll be fun. Do some gaming. But that's all I got for you today. Sorry about the hiccups at the beginning with the sound or whatever. They shouldn't. If you're watching this on YouTube, they shouldn't be there. I deleted that recording. We're only picking up from there. But thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a good one. I'll catch you next time. Bye.